It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy, Alex, and Jason are here. Yeah, it's a week after WWDC, and we have thoughts, lots of thoughts. And of course, the Apple executives have been going around stimulating those talks. We'll talk about the kind of the hangover of WWDC. And I have a theory that Apple's software is on a roll. We'll talk about it next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 977, recorded Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. A slab of ham on a box. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest news from Apple. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to our bachelors for this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. No, it's not the dating game. Alex Lindsay is here from Office Hours Global. Hello, Alex.
Hello. Good
I will use my Bob Eubanks voice, though. Also here, Andy Inatko from inatko.com. Hello, Andrew.
I think a long walk along the beach, and then we would rake for clams and then roast the clams at a clam bake on the beach. And I'd get you home early and hope for a second date later.
You know what made me think of it is you and I both watched that Pee Wee Herman documentary.
Yes.
And early in his career, he entered the match game as Pee Wee Herman and won.
Yeah.
Got picked. That was pretty unexpected, shall I say. Also here, Jason Snell, 6colors.com.
Hello, all colors present and accounted for.
So how was F1? Did you enjoy it?
Didn't go. I went to the Daring Fireball instead.
Oh.
Because I wanted to support the independent tech media, and so I went to the non-sanctioned Apple event.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Had I known
then you got
that
back
was
to your
an
hotel
option.
room and you saw like a 6-color X on the door in rough paint.
They hilariously marked it as optional on our briefing schedule. Optional.
Yeah, optional.
Really?
Only reason I know is because Mac Stories had a piece mentioned. He kind of a humble brag. You know, when I was in the Steve Jobs Theater watching F1 in those fine leather seats.
Presentation, though.
But we're not going to start with that. No, ladies and gentlemen, and I should have warned because we have a fill-in producer. John Ashley's off getting married. Anthony Nielsen, I should have warned him. It's time for the Vision Pro segment.
What do you see? What do you know? It's time to talk the Vision Pro.
Nobody thought that would happen.
I don't know why you're doing this up at the top of the show, Leo. What is happening? Are you okay?
Our energy
you feeling
is high.
all right?
I'm losing my marbles. That's why. No, I just thought I'd throw you a bone.
Oh boy.
Format every now and then. Every network news show does it.
Great.
No, there's news. In fact, you've been embargoed, Mr. Snell, for 2 freaking weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's news. I assume that you spent most of the time last week talking about visionOS 26 and all of the amazing features.
It was such a hot topic. No,
because I do think that is.
How do you scroll with your eyes? Can you explain?
I have not yet successfully scrolled with my eyes. I don't know how that works. I've
or
seen the little alert that says you
should do that.
Should scroll with your eyes, but I can't comment on that. Now,
you did it? Anthony did it.
Oh, good.
So like
if you have the, this is your window, you just kind of like look towards the bottom of the edge and then the whole thing kind of shifts.
So if you look at the top, it'll go the other way?
Yeah, but it's kind of weird because like you have to look at the edge and you can't really like scan.
Yeah, you're reading and all of a sudden in order to go down,
it's weird.
you have to... Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, so the...
By the way, Jason was on Twit on Sunday and turned it into an Apple gab fest.
I did not. I watched in horror as we added a whole second segment about Apple stuff.
We spent the first half hour talking about
I blame the former editor-in-chief of PC World, Harry McCracken, for that one.
Yeah.
But
it turns out everybody on the panel had been at WWDC.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you had. It's not just. It's like you had Jason Heiner from ZDNet and Harry from Fast Company, and used to be the editor at PC World. So it was not Mac guys, it was not Apple guys dragging you to WWDC, but it was sort of the big news of the week. All right, so here's the thing, and this is a lead-in for Alex's excitement, although he hasn't seen it, but I got to see. So Canal Plus, which is a media company in France, they made an announcement last week that they are working on a documentary about French motorcycle racer Johann Zarco at the French Grand Prix. If you click through on that, I mean, we're showing my link to my story, but they've got a whole
is there a whole thing here?
There's the whole press release. There's not a lot about this. That Canal Plus announced a lot of things.
They announced it this week,
but it is they did a bunch of stuff. So one of the big things is they're making this documentary. They released a trailer. It is what they call the first Apple immersive video production filmed entirely with the new Blackmagic URSA
ding, 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 ding. You said our secret word.
So Alex, I can tell you, it looked really good. A lot of motorcycle footage. A lot of you are standing at the track. You are looking out the window. You are down in the pit. It's pretty much. I mean, it looked great. It looked like an Apple immersive experience to begin with. But I feel like this is we've been talking for a while now about like, oh, I don't know, are they out there or what's going to happen now? And it turns out that an early one apparently got to Canal Plus because they have shot this documentary at the French Grand Prix. So a lot of immersive motorcycle racing coming this fall. But they say it's a complete immersive documentary. I assume not a 10-minute long doc, but who knows what it is. But anyway, so there's some
Canal
proof
says
of life.
Produced in collaboration avec le POM, Apple, and MotoGP. A compilation organized by Dorna. This new documentary event is the first Apple immersive video production filmed entirely with the new Blackmagic URSA camera. Immersive.
Yeah. I'm excited about the filmed entirely part, because
entirely.
When I see
Unlike
full length,
that was a message to Bono.
Yeah. When I see full length now, I go, now I need to see I kind of feel like now I need a little sticker on all of them that say 100%, immersive. Yeah. 100%.
Do you need the Canal Plus application to do this or no?
It's unclear how they're going to distribute it.
It's a feature for its application, the Canal Plus app.
Yeah, so it may be that you just go to the App Store when they release this and download the Canal Plus app and get it there. And I don't know if you're going to buy it or if they're going to do the thing where they just have everybody who's got a Vision Pro just gets to see it.
I think it's the promotion for this new app is the whole thing, right?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. But anyway, that's the idea.
And I think that I think we're going to see a lot more. I haven't seen this yet, but from what you're talking about here, I think that you're going to now these kinds of experiences, like you can go there. And I do think that the immersive is going to make a lot of sense for documentaries and for non-narrative
motorcycles. Yeah.
But for non-narrative as well, just feeling like you're somewhere, like I'm going to take you somewhere and I think it's going to be fairly effective. But again, it's been an art project. Every time we've done this for the last 20 years, it's been, cobbling things together, having a camera that you push the button and it records, and having a back end that can publish to the headset is going to make a lot more available. You
do not want a handheld the URSA, or do you?
You can. I wouldn't necessarily do handheld. You could put it on. Yeah, in general, moving a lot. They're going to show some moving. You need to have something stable right in the middle of the frame, typically, to keep your wits about you.
So if a motorcycle's racing by you, you wouldn't pan with the URSA to follow.
No, typically you'd let someone experience them. They'd watch it with their head. They wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that.
So that's what you're.
Because you've got that wide field of view, and there's definitely moments in the trailer where you get that wide field of view where you have to watch. It's like you're standing there, right? You can see the motorcycles coming and going, and you're watching them as they go around, then it'll cut to another viewpoint. But you're not. That I think that is a best practice for this sort of thing is in 2D regular on a screen, like it's doing the panning for you, but in immersive, you should be looking around. It's your job.
And that's part of what makes the filmmaking so much different, why it's hard oftentimes to work with traditional filmmakers, because they have this like, I want you to be looking right here, right now. And you're like, well, you want to experience this thing and then experience that thing. And it's more of a play, but broken up into little bits and pieces. And so I think that it's going to be, I think this will be really interesting. But again, number of cameras out there will start very small. There's one here and one there. But I think that once the tooling's done, the big advantage of having someone like Blackmagic build it is once the tooling's done, they can produce a lot of them. And I think that even though the market is relatively small, it can be big enough if you have enough. 10,000 people willing to do something. That's enough to pay for a lot of things. So maybe not this whole documentary, and I think I'm hoping that Apple. The problem really is that Apple tends not to underwrite other people building stuff for them, and that's it's a huge clamp on what can be done.
Right. This feels very much like a test case still. I mean, the training wheels aren't off, but it seems like as a pilot of here's how a third party can use the Blackmagic camera, Apple, because Apple is listed as a co-producer here. Apple and Blackmagic have gone to a media partner, Canal Plus, and said, let's make a thing presumably using either your production team or a doc team that you're comfortable with. And we have best practices and they've got the cameras and we'll do it. So it's really like, it was probably a pilot of like what happens when one of these things ships, and we'll give them advice and we'll use it. But it feels to me like a step along the way to having the ability to do immersive content just be out in the world instead of it being something that if it's not baked in by Apple, it doesn't exist.
And more importantly, there hasn't been a good MotoGP film, according to Burke, since the Doctor, the Tornado, and the Kentucky Kid.
I will tell. I know nothing about this. I assumed that it was going to be about car racing, and I saw it was motorcycles, and my response is exactly what you'd expect, which is motorcycles,
two wheels. Okay.
I don't
It
really
is at
care.
Le Mans,
but the fact is,
right?
I don't care about the bull rider at the rodeo either. But that was a really interesting immersive doc, or the people free climbing. Right? It's not about deeply caring about a sport. It's more about like, why do people find this interesting? What is the spectacle? That's what I love about docs. Actually, one of my favorite things about documentaries is finding having to be about people who are deeply into something. Because like the King of Kong is my favorite example, which is like, my interest in Donkey Kong is limited, but I love the idea that people are obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And that passion is so amazing. So when I saw I was like, okay, sure. Motorcycle Grand Prix is going to be spectacle. There's going to be human drama. Like, I get it. And in the trailer, like, it's a hell of a trailer. I will watch the whole thing. Totally.
Sorry, Jaws wanted to jump in. In Associated News, iJustine posted a tweet about the new Spatial personas.
Leo, they're so good. They're so good.
They're so much better, aren't they?
They are.
By the beautiful rainbows.
And she got Jaws to respond. Here's Jaws.
They're so good.
Oh my goodness is right. Your persona look absolutely fantastic.
And he's gesturing like he's Italian, not a Jaws weird.
What an amazing WWDC
he's showing off the hand gestures.
The amazing disappearing hand gesture.
I did a persona chat with my friend Casey Liss this morning, and I had to remind myself that it wasn't a regular straight up FaceTime.
That's a big improvement.
They are that good. And the trajectory here, which is kind of one of my points about this stuff, is like, look, we all know it's $3,500. Most people are never going to buy one. They shouldn't buy one. The reason this stuff has to exist is because Apple has a plan to gradually build more affordable devices over the course of a decade, right? But you got to keep pushing the ball forward. When Personas was debuted, they were creepy and dead-eyed, and I was repulsed by them.
Yeah.
And then they did spatial personas. They upgraded the personas and they put them in 3D space instead of in a box, in a 2D box. And they were good. So it was like, yeah, you did it. All right, good. Check the box. But no, in visionOS 26, they're like, forget it, throw it away. Those are bad. We're doing entirely new ones, and they're so much better. They are they capture the sides of your head in a way that the others. It was sort of like a fairly convincing front face, but it was almost like stacked on a mannequin head or something. And now you can actually get the kind of sides and it is. I mean, all I can say is you showed the clip there, but like they look like the people now. Yeah. It's really remarkable how much they look like the people. So good job on whoever built this
right away, because there's nothing new in the hardware to allow this.
I think they struggle with the software. I mean, Mark Gurman at one point was reporting that they were really struggling to get it to ship at all, and how far we've come with the same hardware, right?
Right.
Yeah, and to be fair, I've seen so many videos of people just basically so excited at how good it is. We've seen so many examples like Jaws and like iJustine about how good it is. The only thing that I've seen in videos so far that still stumbles on is beards. Like a mouth will like just disappear and fade away and ghost, depending on the facial hair.
Yeah, in fact, my friend Mike Hurley wrote a piece about this called "Spoiler: The Beard is Still a Problem." And the issue is not the rendering, because the rendering is good. The problem is that if you have a beard, something about the algorithm fails to register that your mouth is open, so you talk sort of like. It's very I have no mouth and I must scream, and they gotta fix that. But the persona itself is so much better than it was. So. Kudos to them for getting one of the best features, honestly, of visionOS, and just kind of tossing it out and doing a better one. Like, just it's really very good.
And I think that this is where Apple's is continuing to grow into the headset. The headset has a lot of capacity. It has a lot of overhead to some degree, and in some cases, like video playback, I would say that when it's doing 90 frames a second, 8K per eye, it is at its max, of what it can do. And so there are places where that's what it was built for. But I think we're going to see more and more of things growing into what you can actually do in the headset. And I think that if they made the headset lower powered, we would never get there. Like, we would never see what's possible. Yeah. That's the issue, is everything, the last set of personas would have been good enough because that's as good as it can do. This one probably has another step up from here. And I will say, even with the last version, I really felt like with the last version that was out, I've had like 1 and 2 hour meetings in with folks that are placed in 3D space, and we're sitting there talking, and I get kind of surprised that I'm having this conversation. Somewhere in the middle, you're just like, I can't believe I'm just doing this virtually. So
he does look a little perturbed by his lack of beard definition.
I mean,
can you play one of the videos so we can see the mouth kind of?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is the mouth just doesn't move.
It looks like he's chewing tobacco.
They got to work on it. Like it. I'm sure there's a fix they can do, and I'm sure they're aware of it, but like, you should be able to use this with a beard. You really should not have to like step 1, shave, step 2, use Vision Pro. Is not ideal.
Apple executives have beards. I just want to point this out.
Yeah, there you go.
By the way, weirdly, that's the first time we've ever seen an Apple executive, as far as I know.
Yeah. I think it's legitimately because the personas are so good now that they can do it.
They could do it. They didn't. That's an admission. They didn't.
It just
want
looks
to
like
do
Jaws, right? It doesn't look like a weird puppet of Jaws. It looks like Jaws, and that's the difference. Yeah, I got a briefing. I did a demo. This is why I wrote about it on 6 Colors, is that I got to experience not just a feature that's not in the beta yet, which is the Jupyter environment, which is interesting mostly because they added UI to environments, so you can sort of choose what they look like, which they didn't have before. It was sort of just a stable kind of immersive environment that you could go in.
The side of your head.
It's so realistic. It's not like a slab of ham on a box, which is what it used to be like. When
really
you turn
is
to
a
the
big
side.
improvement. That's fantastic.
It is vastly better. But like, they did the thing where there were 2 rooms. I was in one room talking to them and using the Vision Pro, and we used the little thing where you can. Again, this is one of those table stakes features in the long run, which is if we both have Vision Pros on and we're in the same room, we should probably see the same things, right? And they've added that. And to go along with that suggests a level of geographic understanding. You understand what room you're in, and you do a share play, and the other person understands you're in the same room and you're seeing the same object in the same space. Well, the next thing they do is they take me out of that room. It's like, okay, where are we going? There's a room next to it.
Never let them take you to a second location.
I know. I was thinking it'd never go with a hippie to a second location. And I step in the door, and all of a sudden, boop, 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 windows and widgets pop up all over in that space because they preset it, because that's one of the other features of visionOS 26.
You can lock them in.
That is also, again, kind of like a long-term AR table stakes, which is if you want to leave, like, Okay, so Sandwich.
I remember though, when you first got it, you lost an app in your garage.
Yeah, that's true. It's like I left Safari in the other room, but that was only when you were using it, and it was sessions would forget where it was. And then the new feature is that through reboots, it's all persistent.
Got it.
And now you can actually lock items in place and say that stay here. And you can, by the way, you don't actually lose it. If you open Safari, you can still see it in a different room. The idea though is when you go back into that room, it'll be back exactly where you left it, which is
funny because Microsoft has a Azure location facility that does that, and they showed it off in their Minecraft apps like 4 years ago, where you would build something, and if you went back to that area as you were walking around, it would still be there.
It is. I mean, geographic persistence is a thing you need to have.
You
if you're going to do AR down the road. So I'll give you an example. Sandwich has this really funny app called Television, where you can place various 3D television objects in space and then watch video on them. Well, that app, and there's another great one called Windora, which is basically like a virtual window that you can put a picture in and set it into a wall, and then it's like there's a window there. But then you take it off and you come back a couple days later and it restarts and they're gone because they're not persistent. With visionOS 26, if you put any app that can generate a virtual physical object in a space somewhere, you basically know that when you come back, it'll still be there, which is like, you have to, if you're going to advance this platform, stuff like that has to be the case. So it's just, I was very encouraged that visionOS 26, they keep rolling the ball forward, because obviously this is a long-term project for them for it to be anything that is broadly appealing. And they're still doing the work. This does not feel like an abandoned platform, and it better not, because the only reason for it to exist is the future.
Right. I'm going to stand corrected on the Vision Pro. They really did stick with it. And it's presumably, I mean, that's an M1 in there? Two? So presumably in years to come, there will be successors that will have more power, more capability. I'm sure they have those in the labs right now.
Presumably. And the most important things, right, is cheaper and lighter. I mean, that's obviously it. But
if it's super capable, maybe it's worth $3,500. You pay $3,500 for a high-end MacBook.
I mean, I still look at in today's dollars, the Apple IIe that I got when I was 12 was $6,000.
Right.
So it's not
true.
It can't be paid.
But for that, you need content and use cases, and that's what they're still struggling with. Is right. I agree that $3,500 seems ridiculous, but if you could watch a bunch of NBA games courtside or a bunch of Broadway shows, or like there are lots of different kind of like very specific applications that if you can get those on that device, even at $3,500 they'll sell some, and at $2,000 they'll sell a lot more. Right. But it's hard. There are not a lot of those right now.
Yeah, and it really has to be a productivity device at that price point. It can't at less than $1,000.
Or luxury entertainment. Luxury entertainment.
Yeah, but that's the. I still think, and obviously Alex will have more to say about this, but I still have the ability, have the inability to think about what content could they possibly create to make people think that a $2,000 even headset like this was worth it as an entertainment device. I mean, they're nice to have the demos, they're nice to have that extra experience, but at that price point, there has to be a huge library of tailor-made entertainment to justify that expense, which is why it has to be a productivity device at that price point.
Well, I also think it depends on whether people have a lot of people they hang out with, and whether, it depends on like a lot of things related to that. Because I can tell you that, like, if I'm watching a movie and my kids and my wife aren't around, I just watch it on the Vision Pro. And the reason I do that is because the resolution is the highest resolution I can find, whether I'm at a theater or at home. The highest resolution of a film is on the Apple Vision Pro. Like, I can see the grain.
But Apple has to make a step. I mean, look, you guys are enthusiasts. You spend a lot of money on it. You're all in on it, but they've got to take that step.
Well, I think that there's a couple things. It's all about building the authoring tools for the content that needs to go onto it, and I think that's what's missing right now. So the camera is part of that problem, but the other part of that is how do you generate virtual environments or experiences and other things in 3D. And I think that Apple hasn't spent enough time on that. They've got the Reality Creator and they've got Reality Converter, and they, but like, for instance, they gave a bunch of money to Blender, to the Blender org, and we still don't have a direct USDZ export from it. And that's the kind of stuff that Apple, should be focusing on. Like, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of money and we We want an exporter out of it, or write it themselves. It's an open source thing. Like write a plugin to do that, effectively, but it should ship with it, And so the key is figuring out how do we make it easier to build content for the platform. And I don't think that Apple's investing enough. And I think this is the same problem. I'll always keep coming back to books, is that Apple is like, build it and they will come. And they need to maybe do a little bit more. So I think that having the apps be a little bit more aggressively, having either supporting other apps, building better partnerships, or building their own apps, or buying companies and doing it. Apple needs to get better at making it really easy to generate content for the headset. Because right now it's not easy, to generate content.
So the club is bombarding you, Jason, with the questions I should have been asking. Tell us about what you saw.
I saw. I already said it. It was a trailer, and it was about you're in the pits, you're following this guy around. It's about this guy who, it's obviously going to be a character study, and he comes back. The PR says comes back to win the Grand Prix. So spoilers, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
But motorcycle action.
Well, I don't want to watch a loser.
I don't want to be like Joe Bob Briggs, but it's like motorcycle foo, pit foo. Like there's the stuff. It's an interactive sports doc. You're going to get all that stuff. I imagine that trailer is now.
He wanted to know if you see it from Zarco's
I didn't see it.
perspective.
That would be a very heavy, large camera to put on there.
He's not going to have an URSA strapped to his helmet.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some stuff like following him. We'll see. But the Canal Plus app is available in the App Store for Vision Pro, so I would imagine the trailer is there now. I haven't verified that.
Oh, okay.
I got it. Apple now has the ability, which is really nice for press, to give us things under embargo in advance, which they added this whole like immersive video utility to the App Store. And one of the advantages of that is you can run that on your Mac and then download a file and then play it on your Vision Pro, which is that's very helpful for those of us who cover this stuff. But I haven't, with WWDC and everything, I haven't gone back to verify if it's in the app yet, but it should be soon. And that's the trailer. And they say that this fall the whole dock is coming out. And the news peg here is that why are we talking about this instead of every other thing that they release on Vision Pro? And the answer is it is the first sighting in reality of Alex's much ballyhooed anticipated Blackmagic camera that regular companies could get and use to make their own immersive content, as opposed to the custom, shall we say, Apple solution that has been built.
Do you have a delivery date, Alex, yet for your URSA Pro?
No.
They don't send you an email saying you'll get it soon?
No.
If you have to ask.
Yeah. So no, it's still.
So one day a package is just going to show up at your door and you're going to go, oh.
I think there probably be more discussions in between. But I think that what's going to be interesting is that it's not just the hardware that they have to get working. It is the software, and it's not what Apple is doing is not the same as what Meta's doing with the software. In Meta, you have a stereo pair that you're looking at. At Apple, there is an extrusion base that's building a delta correction between the inner axial of the camera and the inner ocular of your eyes. And that is a much more complicated problem than what happens. And it's why when done well, the Apple footage looks way better than what you see on Meta, is partially because of the resolution, but partially because of this correction system that can be used. And most of what you're seeing on Apple Vision Pro, if it's not done by Apple, doesn't make that correction. I think the Prima app is the only thing that has made that correction so far that we've seen outside of Apple. So those are the things. But getting that to all work and resolve, I think, is a non-trivial problem. And I think that's so.
Well, that's what's interesting about this whole thing is it's harder to do what Apple set out to do.
Yeah,
they weren't able to do it out of the gate.
So this is the reason you ship the Vision Pro, even though it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Is because
it's a developer beta. Yeah.
If you wait for the moment that finally you are ready to have a consumer product that everybody can use, and then you're like, well, hold on, we need another 3 years to learn everything we need to learn. It's like you've missed the moment. Like, this is the time to stumble around and figure out what's good and what's bad and what works and what doesn't, and get a pipeline going, see the market with people who are thinking about immersive video and all of those things. And like, again, I appreciate them willing to take the punches on this product because, look, actually, I'm going to draw a parallel to Apple Intelligence. When they rolled out Apple Intelligence, they did it in the way that only Apple rolls out anything, which is full marketing blitz to everybody. And that was a problem, right? They shot those Bella Ramsey Apple Intelligence ads for a feature that they didn't have, and that still hasn't shipped and won't ship until next year. And that was a mistake, right? Well, I think they did that with the Vision Pro too. They're like, well, we'll just sell it like an amazing revolutionary consumer product. And it's like, it's not. It is a developer kit. It's a taste of the future. It's fun, but it's not practical in any way. And like, that's okay. As long as they keep their eye on the idea that they're just kind of iterating and figuring it out, because they're placing a bet on that some product they ship, whether it's glasses or a headset or something in between, in the next decade will be built on a version of visionOS. And, I'm not saying that's a guarantee. I mean, the tech may not advance enough for it to create something people are willing to wear. It may not. But I think they and Meta are placing a bet, and Google now are placing a bet that there's probably something there. And if there's going to be something there, they want to be there. And Apple's doing that work now.
And the advantage they have over Meta, for instance, is the fact that I feel like the entire new operating system, all those little buttons and all the changes and everything else, that's built for a headset. Like that is slowly preparing us for headset operation. All the semi-transparent, the glass buttons is all setting up for. They look great on a phone. They look, they're cool. But what they're really useful for is when you put a headset on. And so this is a Apple can do something that's going to take years to develop and have everyone slowly used to it. So when the headset comes up, they don't, the amount of friction to use whatever the wider release is happens. But to Jason's point, you have to have you had to have a seed. You had to have a number of people, and it can't be like 10 people or 20 people in labs. So having 400,000 people who are playing with it and thinking about it and able to talk about it and cross-pollinate, and there's enough for some people to turn that into a business. And I think that's all they have to do right now, and that's all they've had to do right now. But they got to figure out both. The video part is getting very close. By the end of the summer, I think that they'll be very close to having something that's able to churn out video. Live video is the next thing. So being able to have live immersive, which this camera I don't expect to be able to do. No. Not at full resolution and full frame rate. So you should be able to see it live. I think they've talked about it you'll be able to see it live while you're shooting, which is super. If you look at a lot of decisions that I wouldn't agree with necessarily for some of these productions, it's because you can't see it. Like they shot what they shot. Like you couldn't see the live output.
With that submarine movie, you could see that the director is standing there. They did some stuff of like they're literally looking at it in a Vision Pro while they work on it, which is good.
Right.
I will say there was not immersive, but there was a 3D live stream last week, right? Sandwich did the talk show live again, and they learned some lessons. They're going to have, I think it's multiple camera angles this time where you can choose to watch straight on or they had a couple other devices, I think they were iPhones, left and right. Mm-hmm. It's not immersive, right? It's a 3D on a stage kind of thing. But like, I love that they're experimenting with that. The idea of, can we stream this stuff live? So everybody's tinkering, and this is why I likened it when I wrote my first review of the Vision Pro. I likened it to when the early days of computers and the Apple II and stuff like that, because that's what it reminds me of. Is everybody's just playing around with stuff, because I mean the tech is new and it doesn't quite work right and nobody's really there yet, but it's probably going to be something eventually, so let's figure it out in the meantime. And it feels like that's exactly what's happening with a lot of the spatial stuff.
And I think that the phone has turned out to be more successful than I think even Apple expected with the spatial stream, spatial capture. And I mean, when you are out there capturing, for me, still the biggest problem with the spatial capture that Apple does is playing it back inside of photos with that huge blur around the edges really is a bummer. And it's like, and I know that there's some edge issues that they're trying to hide, probably. But, like for instance, that's one of the reasons you open up the Stream Voodoo app, which is another app that's doing spatial, and it takes away this blor and it looks fine. Looks good. And I think Sandwich doesn't use the blur on the outside edges. And it looks fine. I hate that. And so immediately the problem is I think a lot of people that don't use it either don't have the Sandwich app or don't have Stream Voodoo, where you can just open up the stuff from your photo. I mean, does the Sandwich app let you just open anything from your
basically, yes.
From your photos doc? Yeah. So I know with
file
Stream
system.
Voodoo, Yeah, from Stream Voodoo, I just go to my, I just open up whatever I've got and I can look at it, and it's now got hard edges and it's a much more pleasurable experience. But I think that what's really cool is that you can now take your phone and literally just pick it up and be streaming Spatial. That means that we're starting down that path without having to swallow the whole immersive problem, which is going to take some more time, to get well. But all of this stuff is capable of doing it. I did 4K per eye 360, so not 180 but 360. We were doing 4K per eye 360 at 60 frames a second in 2017. so this is not new technology. This is simply it's getting it all working, and it's the higher scale, the 8K, and the higher frame rate, 90 frames a second, which is what makes everything really, really hard.
Well, there's one thing I could say. At least I now know what it looks like when Jason Snell is suddenly snuck up on by the bass player of Metallica.
That's right.
That's the look. By the way, those are not the glasses you're wearing today. Is that?
Those are virtual glasses. You don't capture with glasses. You pick your glasses. And those glasses in particular were ones I picked very quickly because I was in the middle of an Apple demo. Because
you do get to pick the glasses you're going to wear.
And they added a whole bunch of more Apple or glasses options because they want you to try to match glasses that you like or that you wear. But in that case, I really just sort of flipped through and clicked on one and generated that because that was generated during my demo.
Got it.
Very nice. They're very Gus Fring.
Yeah, but, I like it.
I do. Yeah. I mean, because it goes without saying. Maybe Mike Hurley needs to shave and then capture, and then they can add a beard on. But unfortunately, that's not the problem. The problem is the reverse of that. So, but
all right, that's your Vision
That's
Pro
it.
segment. Are you happy?
Now you know.
Thank you, Leo.
Talking the Vision Pro.
Don't get used to it.
Done.
Actually, I'm more of a believer than I was. I mean, we're making progress, which is interesting. That's what Apple had to do to make it something.
And I think thinking of it more as a science experiment and not as a thing they're trying to sell you that you don't want makes it feel a little bit better. Because I think it's really interesting. And no, nobody should buy one, but it's really interesting.
So I'm glad you guys have one. That's good.
It really, to me, it really just illustrates that sometimes your old impressions of Apple and your old rules that absolutely applied in the past don't necessarily apply in 2024, 2025. In old Apple, they would not have released something unless they figured something out that nobody else has figured out yet. In modern Apple, it's fine for them to say, okay, this is just another one of those, but we'll continue to iterate on it. So the next time we hear rumors of a brand new product, I think that appropriately we're not going to be expecting, my God, they're going to fix all the problems that everybody hates about a folding phone or a folding tablet or eyeglasses or whatever. It's just going to be a very nice piece of hardware that's going to do some nice things to begin with. Some people will be able to afford it. Some people will not be able to afford it, but they'll continue to iterate it.
Stay tuned because we are going to talk about a rumor about a brand new product when we come back. When we come back after this word
bombshell
from our sponsor. It's not a bombshell. You're not even close. You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Andy Anako, Jason Snell, and Alex Lindsay. We're glad you're here today. Our show brought to you by Storyblock. You're going to be glad you got Storyblock. If you know anything about content management systems, you know how painful these legacy CMSs can be. They promise enterprise-grade features. What do you get? Slow, clunky systems that need dev support for even the smallest change. And when you're trying to move fast, that's a nightmare. That puts the brakes on the whole thing. Well, this is why I want to tell you about Storyblock. It completely changes it. In fact, once you play with this, you will love it. Unlike those monolithic CMSs, Storyblock is headless. I am a big fan of the whole notion of headless. Your backend with a strong API becomes, your powerhouse, but it's completely decoupled from your front end. So developers, you can build in any framework you want, React, Astro, Vue, whatever, but you still get this incredible CMS connected to the back end. So for instance, marketers can use an intuitive visual editor to create and update content without filling out dev tickets. Oh, and Storyblock, if you're going to put the back end on Storyblock, you'll want to know this. It scales, whether you're a freelancer or part of a global enterprise. They have a global CDN, AWS data centers. It's all over the world, US, Europe, Asia. It's built for performance at scale because this is for you in the enterprise. It's enterprise ready. They got all the features you need, role-based access control, enterprise SLAs, of course, top-tier security, all the stuff Fortune 500's demand. One global e-commerce giant switched to Storyblock and cut content update cycles from weeks to hours. Another major brand empowered marketing to launch campaigns independently, on their own, freeing up devs for bigger projects. So the whole idea of Storyblock, it has an API-first approach. So your content loads fast anywhere in the world. It means better UX, higher engagement, improved SEO. Your users will love it. And your content creators will love it because with their real-time visual editor, well, for marketers are going to see exactly what the content will look at like before publishing. No more endless back and forth over minor tweaks. Devs love it because they get fewer interruptions. Marketers get more autonomy. That's a win-win. Ooh, and if you're an agency, you're going to love Storyblock. Storyblock offers multi-client workspaces, flexible permissions, seamless collaboration tools. You can manage multiple projects without disrupting development workflows. So whether you're a startup, an enterprise, or an agency juggling multiple clients, Storyblock gives you the power and flexibility you need. Try it today. Storyblock.com/TwitTV-25. Use the code TWIT25. Twit listeners get 20% off for 3 months on the Growth and Growth Plus plans. That's storyblock.com/TwitTV-25 and the offer code TWIT25 for 20% off the first 3 months on Growth and Growth Plus plans. STORYBLOK.com/TWITTV-25. Use the code TWIT25. Storyblock. Thank you, Storyblock, for your support for MacBreak Weekly. So what we're in now. Whoop, it's an empty seat for Alex. We'll wait till he teleports back in. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Were you shaving?
No. I should have left it on and just go for it.
I wish I had that button.
I'm in meetings. I'm in meetings a lot, and anytime I'm not active, I have a tendency to just.
It's like a cough button.
Just turn it off.
It's an empty chair.
Yeah, exactly.
What we are in is the week after WWDC, where it's like kind of, we saw the high level 30,000 foot picture, but now we're getting a little more of the details. For instance, in the developer beta for iOS, there is information about an Apple Home Hub smart display. It's in the beta code.
Well, this is what Mark Gurman had been talking about for a while. This is the HomePod with a screen that they
Does it have a robot arm?
No, this is not the one with the arm. Sans. They say it can't really go until they get that new Siri work.
Right. So the file name apple-logo-1088 at 2x-home.png has a picture. So this is, if you use Home Assistant, for instance, or I'm sure other solutions like Hubs, you're probably used to a screen like this, a tablet somewhere on the wall that you might control your home with. A lot of people do that. This is Apple's solution to that.
And this the simple fact that it integrates so well with all of your apps, all of your systems, all of your other hardware means that, again, getting back to what we were talking about a moment ago, it doesn't matter if it doesn't have a robotic arm or if it doesn't fix the problem or bring anything new. It can be very, very good just simply as an Apple version of another one of those things.
Yeah. Well, good. And Mark's been saying end of this year. I guess that's...
Yeah, the question is how much does it really fit into needing App Intents or needing new Siri? Right. Is it just the App Intent stuff? Will that ship this fall or will that be next spring? Sounds like the hardware has been in pretty good shape. So they may do that then. And yeah, I've had an Echo Show. I have a Google Home Nest Mini, whatever they call it now, in my kitchen now. Neither of those devices are particularly great. And
you don't have the A-Word Plus yet, the Amazon AI version.
No, I actually sent the A-Word to the cornfield because I was tired of every single interaction I have with it, including by the way, let me try to sell you on a service that Amazon provides.
Now. Amazon has turned the Echo to its Fire TV device.
And it's unacceptable, and I just won't do it. So I got a Google one, which is okay, but it's really slow and it's not that great. And also I have a lot of Apple stuff and it's not that integrated. So instead, I would love to try a, not necessarily ad-ridden, connected to my stuff device from Apple in my kitchen instead of the Google device. I don't hate the Google device. The Google device is sort of underpowered, but okay. I came to hate the Echo, because it was just, I realized that they should be paying me, because
Amazon is the poster child. It was in Cory Doctorow's first article about it, of enshittification.
Yep.
They are now turning their customer base, their locked-in customer base, I might add, into money machines.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
No.
I've been a 25-year subscriber to Audible, literally since the year 2000, and they just unilaterally canceled my account yesterday because I was on a light listener plan they no longer offer. Instead of handling it in any reasonable way, they just canceled my account. And now, of course, I can go back and reinstate it for the same price for half as many books. And I understand. Look, maybe they're losing money on the old light listener plan. But that was the most kind of abrupt and unpleasant experience. So I'm dropping Amazon. I want to get out of the Audible ecosystem. Corey's been saying, Audible is kind of totally the audiobook monopoly at this point. Even though there are many other choices, they dominate.
Yeah,
I'm ready to move on. I downloaded Libro.fm, which supports my local independent bookstore. Same cost as the Amazon, but I can download them without copy protection and put them, on my Plex server or whatever.
And you can also check audiobooks out from your local library. And the Libby app has an audiobook player in it. And it's great. It does CarPlay. It's really great.
Goodbye, Audible. And boy, I would love, I agree with you. Goodbye, Echo. So I'm an idiot. I read somewhere, I don't know where, that if you bought a new Echo, you'd automatically get A Word Plus. So I bought a new Echo. Did I get A Word Plus? No.
I recently actually I had a couple of Echo devices just like in my library, and they're a little bit old, but they were still useful. And I finally decided that there was no chance whatsoever that I'm going to ever use these for like their intended purposes. So I took them apart and harvested the speakers from them because I'm trying to repair like a Bluetooth speaker. Saying,
that's the best thing to do.
It's a two-way speaker. I can just simply take these things apart.
Yeah.
But it's weird though. It might be more difficult thing to crack than we might imagine. Google, you might think, is, well, gosh, they got the Nest speakers, which I think are very workaday, but they're very, very useful. I have a smart speaker with a screen in my bedroom. I've got a smart speaker with a screen in my kitchen, and both of them are very, very useful. But they're not amazing, but they're very, very useful, and they're worth the amount of money that I spent on it. However, you'd think that because they've got Gemini, which works very, very well, at least when I'm typing at it in inside the Gemini app, you'd think that making that into a conversational AI on these devices would be a slam dunk. But they've been very, very tentative about releasing Gemini and these advanced chatbot features onto these speakers. At Google I/O last month, it was amazing because one of the big things they were saying, it's Gemini on everything. Gemini is going to be in Android Auto, and Gemini is going to be on the watch, and Gemini is going to be on this, and nod, and the smart speakers, and they didn't say anything about it. So
no, they feel abandoned. They really do feel abandoned.
Yeah, I mean,
I also have a Kindle.
Has some legroom here.
And like you, I retired my Kindle for the Kobo. Yeah. Not that Rakuten is some small mom and pop operation or anything.
Spunky.
I think we.
No, but the Kobo team allowed a small spunky operation.
I love it. Yeah, I just subscribed to Readwise, which is kind of a replacement for Instapaper and Pocket.
Right.
And I love it. Now, it's not free, unfortunately. In fact, it's kind of expensive. But
this is where we are, though. I feel like this is the final result of a lot of internet business trends, which is there are kind of a couple models emerging, and one of them is the Amazon model, which is what Cory Doctorow was talking about. It really is the point where like they might as well give it to you for free, because what it is an orifice to be used to send you engagement bait and special offers and stuff like that. Or you go, and the Fire TV is like that too. Or you go the other way, where it's something like Apple is a good example of this, where it's nicer, but you got to spend, because the reason that Apple TV is expensive and Roku and Amazon are cheap is because Roku and Amazon don't make their money on the money they're charging you for the thing. They make the money on all the revenue that they generate on you later based on advertising to you and all of that. And I'll mention, like, Google makes a TV streamer that's actually pretty nice and doesn't do that. But Google is very easily distracted, and in the home speaker space, I feel like Google is probably not even paying attention. But you end up with these choices, which is, do you want it cheap or do you want it good? And if you want it good, you're going to pay through the nose for it, but maybe it'll be good and nice.
It's a great opportunity for Apple.
There's room,
really
for sure. There's room.
I just don't know if I don't know how interested I'm a pretty heavy Apple user. We've talked about this in the past.
I thought you might be.
I look at that screen and I go, I don't know what I'd use that for. Like I walk around and I want the control in my pocket, which is where
you want to talk to your house. What you really want is, that's why you need the new Siri. You want to say, turn on the lights. You don't want to touch something.
Can I just say that one of the reasons why I like my Nest displays and the AI that's in there is that, yes, I'm saying, hey, what's the weather like today? And I'm just listening for, do I need a coat? Do I not need a coat? Do I need an umbrella? Do I not really need an umbrella? But the thing is, the screen is really great for supplemental information for that answer. That you'd be annoying me if you're giving me like a 30-second presentation on the weather. But if I want to know more, I glance over and it shows, actually, here's how it's going to go hour by hour, and here's tomorrow weather too. And Nest is really, very good at figuring out, in context of the request, what else can I put on the display that I don't have to say out loud? So there's a lot of opportunity there for that display.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
And I think that I guess
I just don't want to touch the display. I want to talk to it.
Yeah.
And then use the display as a supplemental information.
Yeah, ambient information, or like somebody FaceTimes you when you're in the kitchen, and you can just pick up and have it use center stage.
I will rip all the Google and Echo, Amazon stuff out and put in HomeKit if they live up to the promise of it. They haven't yet.
I just think that, like, for me at this point, like my ChatGPT is so embedded into like my daily life that I look at this and I think this is why this is why it's an existential threat for Google and not for Apple, is that I'm still on my iPhone. I'm not going anywhere, but I've stopped searching. I've stopped Google searching, and I've stopped calling it ChatGPT. I now call it Janet from The Good Place. So I literally push a button and I go, Janet.
Hey, Janet.
And
that's a good name.
It's getting inside your head, Alex. Don't let it inside your head.
Yesterday, the garbage disposal didn't work, and I was like, Janet, my garbage disposal isn't working. What can I do? And she's like, you might want to look underneath. There might be a button to reset it. And I'm like, where is it? It should be right in the middle of the center. Like,
I love it. Isn't it amazing? Pushed the button and it was done. That was going to be $150 of calling somebody, because I don't know anything about disposals. But I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. I was in a theater. I didn't even say what the brand was. I'm like, hey, I'm in a projection booth, and I go, I'm looking at a CP950. Is the big dial, does that control the speakers in the theater or in the room? And they goes, oh, that's the speakers for this. I was taking a walk last night, and there were horseshoes on the wires above.
Yeah.
I thought, what the hell is that? So I took a picture, said, hey, what's that? And it told me it's to take up the slack in fiber optic. I learned that the neighborhood had fiber optic. And I would have just, in the past, just walked by going, well, there's some weird structure in the wires up over my head.
Gemini is good at that too. I'm cleaning out I'm going through a lot of house cleaning and trying to figure out which of these 6 portable Bluetooth keyboards that I acquired is a keeper, and just the ability to simply use Gemini Live and say, how do I pair this keyboard? And we'll just say, oh, well, that looks like a Gen 2, blah, blah, blah. Hold down the F key and press one of these 3 keys at the top, because it was just befuddling me. And the thing is, Gemini has my loyalty right now. Not that I think that, oh my God.
Is that because you have an Android phone, a Pixel phone? Or
it was my default, because I was looking at it before just simply as a research thing, when there was just the Llama models. And because I have a Pixel phone is really well integrated at a fundamental level. But Alex is right that I could be using the icon at the bottom of the screen could be the GPT app instead of the Gemini app without much difficulty. The thing is, though, they're so close to each other in they're the 80% of what they do, that if my loyalty is originally to Gemini, I kind of need a reason to try something with Open AI. And also, when I'm doing that thing I should do like every 6 months, looking at all of my subscriptions and ask myself, yeah, I know it's only $20 extra to do ChatGPT as well, but I almost never use it. Should I be paying $20 a month? Whereas Gemini will definitely have, for that and all the other AI tools that Gemini Pro, I forget what they call it, but the subscription version of it adds on. It's like, that's a good $20 package every month that earns its keep. And I don't know that Claude or any other one will have that much of a role in my life if I already have something that is, again, 80% overlap with everything else.
But that's why it's so important.
By Perplexity. Firefox is Perplexity is across. Perplexity allows you to choose your model, and you can choose Gemini or you can choose ChatGPT, $20 a month. Firefox, I think, is about to make, and this is really interesting because they get a lot of money from Apple, Perplexity, their default search. If that happens, now somebody in the Discord made a very good point. What's going to happen when we get the enshittification of AI?
that AI ain't cheap, boy. Right? Who's paying for it?
That's scary.
How? Yeah.
When it starts doing what the Amazon Echo's doing and saying, "Oh, by the way,"
you'll have those two paths again, right? Which is we'll just pay for the premium AI, and then you won't be bothered. Yeah. It's like or Netflix or anything else, or you can get this one and it's cheap or free, but it's full of ads.
There's also the theory that in research with researchers that an AI model gets progressively more, we're driving it insane by using it. And slowly, they're adding improvements, more models. But the thing is, the corpus of this model is losing its grip on its mission and its reality little by little with each passing year. So there's going to be, again, but with this couple of researchers' theory, there'll be a curve where it's getting better and better and better. And then suddenly it just completely destabilizes and then falls off the cliff. And we have to start again.
And all I can say is that I plan to take full advantage of it until that happens. I just
make it feel bad about itself.
No, I'm just going to keep on. I feel like some people are talking about the end of the world and AI, and I'm just like, well, I'm going to enjoy the last 5 years. I mean, I'm going to, make sure that so I'm like,
ChatGPT, everybody's figured you out. They know that you're no good and that you're just not good up to the task. That's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm hearing, and I keep defending you. But oh boy, do people really have literally no faith in you? And those shoes are ugly too.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I want you guys to tell me what the important learnings were from WWDC. There were all the executives went out and did interviews. What have we now a week later learned? That's the question for you to contemplate. Mr. Jason Snell, Andy Ihnatko, and Alex Lindsay. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. We stream, by the way, the show live every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. Of course, if you're already in Club Twit, you can watch in the Discord and chat with us in the Discord. But it is open to the public, not the Discord, but we've got YouTube, and we follow the chat there. I'm seeing all the chats in all the places. Twitch.tv, TikTok. Yeah, we stream on TikTok, of all things. X.com, Kick, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you want to watch us live, I invite you to do so. Of course, most people watch after the fact or listen after the fact because it's a podcast. That's why we make it a podcast. So you can always subscribe in your favorite podcast player or go to YouTube or our website, twit.tv/MBW, to watch later. Or do both. That's fine with me. I like having a live audience. We've always had a live audience for all of our shows online, just because that's how you get interactive, right? On we go with the show. Apple's Craig Federighi said it was a long road to Apple's multitasking. This is his interview with Andrew Cunningham and Ars Technica. Why did it take so long?
There was a lot of stuff where the interview is really, really good, and it's substantive, where he's basically saying that the capability, the distinction he was making between macOS and iPadOS wasn't theological in nature. It was that the performance of the iPad is such that it's not going to be able to keep up with multi-touch and what you would be doing by manipulating windows. Also, the hardware of the iPad for the longest time was not going to be capable of running multiple apps in the way that that someone who interacts with a desktop.
He also said Mac users were more tolerant of latency.
But that makes sense because again,
direct interaction.
Exactly. You're not directly manipulating something on a screen. He may say again. This is what I like that interview. The substantive point that he said that we set a goal for ourselves that this kind of multi-window multitasking means 4 windows on the main screen, 4 windows on an external screen, and if we can't get all that working at the same time, we need to keep on developing this, both the hardware and the software. So it's not just simply, hey, we don't want to make the iPad because like the Mac because we have a dogmatic exclusion. He was making the case, at least again in this what he knew was a public forum, that there were technical reasons, and here's what our goals were, and we were not able to meet those goals until Apple Silicon, until the most recent Apple Silicon and the most recent everything.
Yeah, I mean, the original iPad multitasking was kind of at an earlier time. Basic. You remember it was limited to very specific hardware, and part of that was because they were using chips that were not as powerful as the M series and later, and as well as not having enough RAM that they have now. So that's part of it. My understanding also, that's my cryptic when I say my understanding, we all know what that means, which is I can't tell you how I understand it, but I understand it, is that they embarked on a multi-year project to completely rewrite the windowing interface. And what this is not is a modification of what has come before. That was around for a few years, and they realized they needed to start from the start and just do it right. And so they threw that away. That's gone. And what they have is an entirely new multi-windowing model that's inspired by the Mac that can use modern Apple Silicon processors and the increase in RAM in the general environment now that wasn't there before, and build something that works great. And having used it for a week, it works really, really well. They did a great job with it. So it really is one of those interesting cases where they cared enough about multi-window on the iPad to not just keep patching what they had built, which was a compromised system, but to admit we just got to throw this away and start again. And so they had a team that just has been chunking away for a while in the background. And this is what they've done, which is basically bring Mac windowing to the iPad. And not only can you put the windows everywhere and you can put them off the side if you want and all the things you just expect on the Mac, but it's got Expose, it's got all the tiling features they added to the Mac last year, and they're all bound to shortcuts or to keyboard shortcuts, so you can, what is it, globe shift left arrow and the window that you're in goes automatically tiles to the left half of your screen, or you can tap and hold or click and hold on the green button and you get a whole menu of different tiling options. You can do globe F to toggle in and out of full screen. It's the whole thing. They just did it and dropped it on the iPad and said, there it is. This is what
Federighi told Andrew Cunningham at ours. We've discovered many, many optimizations. We re-architected the windowing system.
It's new.
Re-architected the way we manage background tasks, background processing. That enabled us to squeeze more out of other devices than we were able to do at the time we introduced Stage Manager.
Right.
Cunningham also says Stage Manager still exists, but it's an optional extra multitasking.
It's what it is on the Mac. It's Stage Manager on iPad now. Stage Manager on iPad used to be how you did multitasking. Now it's just an option to manage windows if you want to, just like it is on the Mac, and it has nothing to do with the fundamentals of the window management, which, as he said, it's a rewrite. They put it together, and then he mentions background tasks. One of my other favorite announcements of iPadOS 26 is the fact that you've got the ability now, because this was one of my complaints about Final Cut, right? Was they're like, yay, we did Final Cut, and don't leave the app when you export. because it'll fail. And like on my Mac, I can start a Final Cut export and then check my mail, right? But you can't do that on the iPad.
Can't download in the background. Yeah.
So they did this thing, and they did it in a smart way, right? Because their concern is that on the iPad, especially, you're not going to be thinking about the fact that there's some app in the background that's chunking away at something and killing your battery. And so it's for finite tasks that have an end that were initiated by the user, and then if you go to the background, it pops up a little live activity, and it's not just Final Cut exports and 3D renders, but like a big file copy in Files will do that too. And so you don't have that moment of like, I'm copying a file, but I can't leave, right? Like, because and it feels so old and silly, right? Because this thing is incredibly powerful as a computing device, and yet I've been able to switch to another window while my Mac was doing something since the 90s. So, they did a lot. I mean, it's very impressive what they did. They seem to have finally embraced the idea that let the iPad not just like be its own thing, but take stuff from the Mac, and it's just not a big deal. If windowing is good on the Mac, do it. Just, don't try to pretend like you need to put a weird spin on it for the iPad. You could just do it.
Yeah, and there was also the problem of not all Mac apps, third-party apps, are designed to react well to being in an arbitrarily sized window. One of the big things in one of the developer videos this year was changes they were making to UIKit that basically tells developers, hey, look, in the past, if you haven't made your app responsive to unspecified screen sizes, we've tried to help you out by putting you into a container that would be appropriate for your app. We're not doing that anymore. So your app is either not going to work or it's going to look like hot garbage. So you have to start changing your app so that it can sit in an arbitrarily sized container, which is, again, so a lot of it, one of Apple's great strengths is to be able to dictate something to its developers and make it stick. That's not something that Google can do when it makes a big change to Android. But if Apple says, look, again, here's what it's going to be like. You can either have your app stink on ice and look like it stinks on ice, or you can play nice, do what we've been trying to get you to do for the past 2 or 3 years, and be ready for the upcoming folding iPhone, which we can't actually directly mention, and be ready for resizable apps on the iPad and on the Vision Pro. So yeah, a lot. It's like Jason said, it's a big change, and like I'm glad to see all this specific information that this is not simply a dogmatic opinion that we're not going to make the iPad like the Mac because the Mac we don't want to make a toaster fridge. It's like that, which seemed odd when Tim talked about that many years ago. We're not asking for a toaster fridge. We're asking for like a modern tablet based machine. You make it a Mac or an iPad, but it shows that this is whatever influence that might have had in the past, that was no longer operative, and they really were working very, very hard to move mountains to make sure that this happens. Seems like a simple change. Finally, oh God, they've listened to me after all these years. Like, no, it took a long time to make this happen.
And I don't think the Mac's going anywhere, but I don't think that they've ever protected the Mac from the iPad. I think it's a matter of figuring out what parts of the Mac they want to put in the iPad and how to do it effectively and everything else, because I still think that Apple views the iPad as the more modern version.
Sure.
and so the Mac is there, and they're continuing to develop it, but it's I still feel like somewhere there's a little bit of, well, that's the legacy platform.
I think I think there's a lot less of that than there used to be. There was definitely a time when that was absolutely what they thought. But I think it's the reverse, Alex. I think that they have overprotected the iPad from the Mac for a while, and they're like, well, we can't just do what we did on the Mac. Let's do it differently. And with windowing, you're seeing them, the windowing on the Mac's pretty good. Maybe we could just do that. And so they do it. I would say, to Andy's point about kind of dogma, I feel a real dropping of dogma with the iPad now, where they're like, you know what? If Mac windowing is good and that's what people want, we'll do it and we'll make it good. Instead of it being like, well, we're going to be precious about it and kind of take it 3/4 of the way and leave it there where nobody's happy. They're like, no, we're going to go all the way. And the thought struck me last week while I was writing one of my stories that the big winner here is Apple. I feel like for the first time, the next time they do a round of iPad Pro releases is not going to get the same story they've gotten for the last 8 years, which is, well, the hardware is nice, but the software just isn't good enough, and you can't use it, and their software is letting down the iPad. That has been the narrative for basically a decade now, since the iPad Pro was first released in 2015, a decade ago. And I feel like they've skated away from a lot of that this time. I'm sure there'll be people who still rehash that narrative, but like I look at what's in iPadOS 26 and I think, oh, for the first time, I feel like iPadOS, or first time in a long time, iPadOS is software that lives up to the hardware. And that's a great, that's going to be so good for them to not have that criticism. I mean, there'll be other criticisms, right? But I feel like the idea that the OS has completely let down the hardware, it feels like isn't so much the case anymore.
I think that the hard part is it's not so much the OS that is letting down the hardware as much as all the other apps. I mean, there's no apps that are fully taking advantage oftentimes of the iPad's power. Which is, and the problem is that's combined with Apple makes a really good tablet that lasts a long time. My daughter is still using the first iPad Pro, the 12 point whatever, in her room. she's still using it. Like they're very, very durable. They last a long time.
9.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still in use. And I have some Pros. I think they're a couple years old. I haven't felt, here's the problem is for Apple is I haven't felt the need to go to a newer one. The one that did get me to buy one was because one of the apps needed to have it. I think it was I think it was Resolve or something needed something to move up. But in general, I've not felt the rush that I felt to I have to get something, and I've slowed down on the phones. I think Apple is having a hard time outdoing every phone every year. And I don't think that was the design, but some of us were buying them every year. I think the 15 was a huge jump forward. I think that the 16 I didn't feel like I needed to have. So like it wasn't enough change. So I think but I think that the problem with the iPad is that again, we just don't have developers pushing it hard enough. And I mean, Apple's getting there, but I think that there's very few times when you open up an iPad and you feel it bend under.
Well, that's true. Although, I mean, between the background tasks and the menu bar, like I feel like they have laid the groundwork here for the iPad and its apps to be taken more seriously. And the third party, there are some really great third party apps for it, but I agree. But like if the platform vendor can't do it, then what's the point? And to Apple's credit, I feel like they've stepped up now in terms of building an operating system for the iPad that's worthy of the hardware that it runs on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I would say that the other thing that this is a problem for the M series in general that Apple run into is these chips are so powerful. The M4 Mac Mini, I'm running 120 frames per second, 1080p or 4K actually, 4K at 120 frames per second out of a Mac Mini, and it's at like 10% capacity. And so it makes me think about when the only time we ever feel it processing is when I'm running Resolve with a D-grain. And a full size render on a little base unit $600 Mac Mini is the only time we feel like it started to slow down, right? And I think that's going to be, again, I think Apple has to look at. I still feel like Apple needs to invest in. I know it's against this is where they are dogmatic of like we're not going to ever pay developers to do something, but I think they really should have a mega fund like what Epic did if you're going to do something adventurous on our hardware. We'll help you, because I think that would help them get people being more aggressive with the hardware.
I feel like there's a bigger story here. For a long time, Apple's been criticized for their software. Their hardware is great, but they just don't have a good software team. Not since, Steve Jobs was running the pirate operation. And you had, Bill Atkinson and Andy Hertzfeld. Does it seem to you like suddenly software's clicking? But like everything we've talked about today is improved software. Did Craig Federighi bring in a bunch of new people, fire a bunch of dead weight? What happened? Or is that just my imagination?
I don't know. And the problem is we'll try to connect it to things that we've been talking about for the last 6 months, but it's probably more like something in the last couple of years. But it's very hard to see. But I agree with you. Does that impression
make sense to you? It feels like there's suddenly, like just even
it's an exciting time.
Yeah.
The profiles in Vision Pro. Suddenly we re-architected iPad windowing. Sounds like their software team is suddenly getting good.
Clicking a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that the port to M1 was an incredible amount of energy, both before, but before the M chip and
everything
after,
had
like
to be
for
moved.
years. You got to remember that there's like there was a huge lift for 2 or 3 years before the M1 came out. Of how do you get ready for the
so
M1.
They were distracted.
Then you have all this other stuff that's happening afterwards to kind of keep, and they're continuing to, to rebuild all the code. And you're seeing more being ported to Swift. You're seeing more, which is going to be much more efficient than some of the older solutions that they had before. And so there's a lot of optimization of the code for the hardware. So I think that there's been 5 or 6 years of that energy at least being sucked up. Just by this conversion to an entirely new platform, and I think we're now only just starting to see the fruits of that. Also,
process. they built Vision Pro in the background the whole time. They had a team building and a car, right? So visionOS was stealth until 2 years ago, right? But those people have been able to. There's still people working on Vision Pro. Obviously, it's moving forward, but a lot of that they built that OS, and so that is freeing up people, and the car project freed up people, and we know that we've seen like Rockwell, who was in charge of Vision Pro, has now been brought over and is doing other stuff, including Siri. So like, I do think that this may be. In hindsight, we may look at this and say, oh, that period where the software was kind of shaky was when they had at least 2 Skunkworks projects unannounced where they were building whole operating systems underneath the surface. And now they're back doing what they're doing here. And it wouldn't, I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the story too. It's just like a lot of engineers who spent a lot of time building. I mean, I've talked to people like years ago who were working on car stuff, and then it turns out working on vision stuff. And now those projects are either wrapped or they're visible and they've shipped. So it's a better time. The vibes are good, Leo. I mean, I really, at a time when a lot of the vibes around Apple are very bad, in terms of this very specific, like, are they executing on software? Where the answer for about 5 years has been not really. It felt like they this OS update, they're really showing their work, and the work is pretty good.
And I think what you're seeing is also a grand unification of all these OSs. That they're really all feeling like they all belong to the same thing, which is the Vision OS. That's what they all feel like they're part of. Is they've kind of built something that they're not planning to change for a while.
Yeah, and for a $3 trillion company, we often forget that Apple has a limited amount of focus. So if something is commanding a huge chunk of that attention, then their collective attention is not necessarily going towards other directions. And so I think that Jason has a really great point that a lot of their attention has now been freed up to the meat and potatoes of the operations. I think that's why we're seeing cumulatively a lot of this really quiet, revolutionary stuff. I think really, honestly, this is one of the best WWDCs I think in many years, because we're just seeing not one of my things is always that, okay, fine, you built a $3,500 gadget, you made a $12,000 watch, give something that will actually help people and make their lives simpler, give more value to the stuff that they already own. And this really was one where, if you have an iPad and you bought it like in the last 4 or 5 years, it's about to get so much better. If you did buy the Vision Pro last year, we're going to actually make it a lot more useful than it used to be. On and on and on and on, just little changes, basic changes that make whatever you bought in the last 5 years work way, way, way better, and make you glad that however long ago you put that money into the Apple platform, you feel like that was a really good investment. Again, I'm very happy about WWDC.
And I will say that also that the language stuff, we kind of stepped over. Apple's not in the front lane on the language thing. Microsoft was way ahead of everybody else. Google has been doing this for a little while, but we are really quickly approaching a time like very Star Trek-y. Like we're 2 or 3 years away from you having a conversation with someone with your AirPods in, and you're just hearing the translation as they're talking. And I think that's kind of amazing when we think about it. It's going to be it's going to be zero latency language translation. I mean, there's little headsets that kind of do it now, but it's going to be something everybody has, I think, probably within the next 3 years. And that's going to change a lot of things. I was talking to someone, they just released some of these AI things to go back and forth. I think it's Google actually did this with Kinyarwanda, which is a pretty small language. This is the language in Rwanda.
Yeah.
Now it's being supported. It means that the entire English, corpus of information is now available to someone who doesn't speak English in Rwanda, which is a big deal from an education perspective.
Yeah, that was
watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. I'm glad you're here. As a data point that Apple has improved its software, do you think? I mean, it's an opaque operation, but it feels like they maybe have reassigned, reorganized, moved people around. For instance, they've migrated their back-end servers for passwords from Java to Swift, and they saw a 40% improvement. I'm sorry, Java to Rust. Did I say Swift? It says Swift, but it was Rust. I think. I don't know. Now, see, I'm seeing
Swift.
I thought it was too, but then I'm seeing competing articles. So maybe it was Swift. I don't know. But
they're real believers in Swift and on server side to the point where there's this entire, I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but they just dropped an entire new container architecture last week.
Isn't that fascinating? It's a Docker-like system just for Mac OS.
It's Docker-like. It runs on Mac OS.
It's got Linux as the scant operating system.
That's right.
Not
and
Mac
so you
OS.
can do it's a Linux container. So it's Docker-like,
fascinating.
but it's a Linux container, and then you can do the idea is you can do it for anything you want, but they built it so that you could do like Swift, server-based Swift stuff because they found value in that.
So the password backend was written in Java, that kind of thing that any enterprise would do, a quick and dirty version of it. At some point, they said, let's re-architect this. They got 40% improvement. John Voorhees has an article at Mac Stories about the new speech to text APIs.
I used this earlier today. So his son whipped up the command line tool that uses those APIs that are available to developers now, and there really should be
We've used Whisper from OpenAI for a couple of years now, and thought very highly of it.
Yeah, so I've used Whisper CPP, which is a C++ project.
Yeah, you recommend
and
it.
I wired a shortcut into it, and it's using the V3 Turbo, and Apple's transcription that's built in. It will be on every Apple device that has 26 on it. It was about twice as fast as Whisper.
Wow.
It was not as accurate, I will say, as V3 Turbo, but twice as fast. And it will be great to give that power to users, but it also goes to
that may be a dial, by the way, you can turn. That typically is. Slower means more accurate.
But like that also means every app developer gets that. So if there's any audio, if you're a podcast app developer, you can just turn this on your podcast. I transcribed a almost 2-hour long podcast in like 75 seconds on a Mac Studio. So
his son Finn, he says in just like 10 minutes built this app, Yap, a command line using the speech framework. So he's obviously got the developer beta going.
Right, only works on the beta, and Yap it shouldn't need to exist, right? But he needed a way to bridge
just
to those,
demonstrate it
to those frameworks.
Yeah, you won't
from the
need
command line, but you can literally, unlike Whisper, where you have to convert it to a very specific WAV file format. Apple's stuff, you just give it a sound file that Apple understands, and it spits out a transcript. It's kind of amazing, and this is part of the story of WWDC, where third-party app developers are getting access to a whole bunch of different Apple models that are machine learning models that they can just use in their apps. And this is another one of them, which is this transcription engine. So you can take speech and turn it into text in a very short amount of time.
I also love it, and we've mentioned this a few times, but that the Apple has made all of this stuff available to app developers.
Yeah.
So you get these great high quality tools, and what it shows also is a little bit of a change in culture from no, we're going to have access to the best stuff. You're just going to have to do with what we give you. Apple will let third party music apps show animated artwork on the iPhone screen now, right?
Yeah.
That's I think a slight cultural shift, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, some of it I think is actually nudged by regulation. I noticed a lot last week where they were announcing new features and saying, and there's an API, where it used to be sort of like a new feature and then wait a year or 2 or 3 or 4 and then maybe there'll be an API. And I think that that's good. But also, look, they're not going to say it, but I know a lot of developers feel it. If they don't feel the love necessarily, they feel the generosity here, where Apple is saying, yes, we want to give you tools so that your apps can be good on our platform. Now, we can all say, of course, that is one of the ways that Apple can make its platform stronger is by letting its app developers make better apps. But there have been times when it felt like Apple wasn't doing that. And this year, I know a lot of developers are like really excited. They're not excited about the new design, mostly because it will cause them to do more work this summer on the new design, but they are excited about things like access to all these different ML models that Apple has just given them. It's because it reduces an amount of overhead that makes it kind of unlikely in a lot of circumstances for apps to innovate on this platform, and instead it makes it pretty easy for them to do it. It's pretty exciting.
Your headline, Apple gets over its hangups with the iPad, really maybe more than just the iPad.
Maybe so. I mean, certainly with the ML stuff, the fact that the Xcode will use any AI model you want, including ones not yet developed, right? Like you can plug in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. If a hot new model comes out, you just plug in the API key in the URL or something you build locally, and it'll just work. That is a very clear change from a year ago when they're like, we are working on one model for Xcode. Now it's like any model, bring your own model to Xcode.
Maybe they're a little humbled.
They have one that's
been
baked.
Humbled by all this.
Oh, and I'll say that the Xcode one, they have a pre-baked version that they worked on with OpenAI that uses ChatGPT, but it's a very specific version that is going to be the best with Swift code and Xcode. And I feel like they were humbled by last year. Yeah. And I think that there were maybe some executives who were like, no, we will do it all ourselves and we will dominate. And then after what's happened in the last year, other people at Apple have said, what we should do is be more open because there's a lot of great stuff out there and we could use it and it makes our products better. It makes our platform better. It doesn't all have to be from us. And I definitely had people at Apple say, we don't have to do everything here. And last year, it sure felt like they had to do everything. So this is better. It's better.
As Andy pointed out, he can now use his Mutt text-based email in Apple's terminal and not feel bad about it. Apple, weirdly, I don't know why, because there's so many third-party terminal apps, including the very popular iTerm, but Apple has updated the terminal app even.
Yeah, I think this is because sometimes you see evidence that Apple's own developers, Apple's own engineers are like, I'm sick and tired of using our built-in app that I have to use all the time stinks. I'm going to add features just for me to make me happy.
Maybe that's what happened. Yeah.
I haven't checked it myself, but a couple other people are saying that this is literally the first time they've updated the terminal app in any meaningful way since.
I only use it when for some reason iTerm or Alacrity or Kitty or lately I've been using Ghost TTY when those aren't for some reason available. Maybe I'll start using Apple's terminal app. Same thing with Spotlight. I've been using Raycast and Alfred and LaunchBar. I don't know if I need all those extra features. Spotlight looks like it might be plenty. It's really a change. It's good. Apple was getting a reputation for not doing well with software, to be frank. And I think that might be changing.
Yeah, again, exciting times. I mean, this is fresh on my mind because today I borrowed from this library the new book on Apple in China and had to return it today because it was due, even though I hadn't quite finished it yet. So it's a good book. I'm gonna have to buy it. But one of the fun parts of the first quarter of it is just the history of Apple and the trouble and dogma that was kind of handicapping them from the beginning. And one of them was an exchange between Steve Jobs and someone else at the company saying, why are we letting third-party developers make money off of our work? We resent that. And sometimes you see, again, that was a long, long time ago. That was back in the 90s. But sometimes you feel as though there's some residue of that, cigarette smoke, in the wallpaper. and it feels like that's absolutely going away, especially with what they're doing here. The ability to simply, I don't think it could be overstated how important it is to allow developers to have access to these models directly, to simply say, no, I'm not going to simply support an Apple Intelligence feature that's on the side of the box that Apple is promoting that helps to promote Apple. I just want my app to be better. Wouldn't it be great if we could extract text text from something that's going on, not to do simply speech to text and make that a feature, but so that we can now examine the text with another LLM, make a decision that benefits the user, all as something that is a feature inside our app. That would have been so many hours of development, such a huge distraction before WWDC 2025. Now I'm sure it's getting a lot of developers thinking, what is now possible? We will make time because, my God, wouldn't that be a great transformative feature for our scheduler and organizer?
Yeah, we've definitely talked to some developers who are definitely looking at the AI solutions, even though they're not as robust as some of the other ones. They're great to solve a bunch of simple.
They're free. They're on device. There's a lot. There's a
Stable.
lot.
That's really powerful.
They're not going to be the solution for everything, but they can be the solution for a lot of things. And being able, like, if you're an app developer and you're thinking like, oh, well, I could do AI, but I'm going to either need to include a model and then update it all the time, or I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to go out to the cloud, but then I'm going to need to get an API key and it changes my business model. Instead, it's sort of like, no, I'm just going to do a thing on the phone using the phone's processor, and we don't even need to talk about what it is. It just happens on device. That is great. And Apple also is going to keep updating those models. And every time Apple updates that model and makes it better, all the apps that use the model get better. And that's pretty great too. I wanted to, since this is turning into Love Fest, I'll just say, for those of us who really love the Mac, and I think all of us here fall in that category, that Spotlight thing that Andy mentioned, the fact that one of the major features at WWDC is that they took not just Terminal, but they took Spotlight. And they did pro things to Spotlight, power user features to Spotlight. And I asked some Apple people, I was like, do you think this Spotlight feature is going to be like embraced by the masses? And they said, no, of course not. It's a power user feature, but there's value in exposing the power of our system in places that we control, like Spotlight, and the idea that they've got the quick keys and they've got app intents and they've got a clipboard manager. It's literally in the entire 41-year history of the Mac, Apple has never let you look backward in time on the clipboard. That has only been if you add a third-party app. And yet in macOS 26 Tahoe, boom, clipboard history is a feature that's built into Spotlight, and like a couple of keystrokes and you've got a clipboard history. Like, those are, like, I would never have bet that Apple would double down on power user features in Spotlight on the Mac, but they did. And that is for me, that is such a great sign that there are people at Apple who are being allowed. There have always been people at Apple who love the Mac and want the Mac to be great. The people at Apple who love the Mac, want it to be great, and are being allowed to do stuff like that again.
And it's smart because it so ties you into the operating system, because you get good at those things, and now you're really, this is how you do those things. We were talking on office hours, I think, a couple of days ago, and I talked about, someone asked me how much I use PCs and other things. I said, I have PCs. I have a couple over here, and I've got some Linux boxes, but they're all appliances to me. Like, I use them as appliances. There's things that they do that's because they're the only thing that does that, and that's why they do that. I said, but my entire environment is a Mac, and here's the thing: it's just because of Notes. Like literally, Notes is the glue. It seems like such a basic app that we have here, but it is on all of my computers, and I'm able to keep sync wherever I'm taking notes and wherever I'm putting things down and whatever I'm taking pictures of or whatever I'm throwing in. All of that stuff is all in across all of these platforms. And it's so, I can't even imagine, like, every time I go to a PC, I suddenly realize my Notes is my other part of my brain. And I'm like, I can't operate for very long. And so I think that when they make these things, something that seems simple like Notes or like Spotlight, really, really powerful, and they continue to invest in it, it definitely, the sticky factor gets much higher too.
Yeah, and let's squeeze in one last thing about the ability, one of the knock-on effects of developers being able to implement like Apple's on-device built-in like AI models, as opposed to having to go out for a license key, to having to go out to other apps and other services. This means that they get to keep like their privacy nutrition sticker. They don't have to say, oh, by the way, we're sending some of your data out to a third party. Please don't be scared by that. If you click through, you'll find out that it's actually just not as bad as it sounds. But this is now just, no, we are only using and trusting Apple's own on-device stuff, so we don't have to put anything that's kind of scary into our App Store listing.
There way, there's one great quote in Apple in China. I'm really enjoying the book because there've been a lot of books about the origin story of Apple, but it's Apple later after Steve Jobs came back.
Triumph.
Yes.
Yeah, the Triumph. And so it's something that hasn't been that well documented. And there's a lot of interesting things in there.
If we don't close this deal, you don't understand. Don't negotiate with us on the sale of this facility. If we don't close this sale by Thursday, nobody gets paid.
What a great story.
That's how close they were. Yeah.
What a great story. He's like, you're threatening my paycheck? He's like, no, I'm saying we won't be able to pay anyone.
All of our paychecks. All of them.
Sell your factory now.
Scott McNeely, this is also quoted in the McGee's book, highly recommended Apple in China. Once likened Dell to a grocery store. He said they're not in the PC business any more than Safeway's in the food manufacturing business.
Right.
And I think that's a very big distinction between the PC makers, those appliance makers, Alex, that you were talking about, and Apple. Apple really takes ownership of the whole chain. They are growing the food.
Yeah. I think one of the insights, look, there are a lot of insights in that book. I really highly recommend it to everyone. Yeah. Obviously the headline story is how Apple got further and further kind of enmeshed in China to the point where it's going to be almost impossible for them to get out, and how they were at the same time also basically creating skills that will allow China to excel at electronics manufacturing for decades to come. But I took away another one too, which is Apple, and Apple's always kind of been this way, but even more so now, Apple has a vision for what products it wants to make. And so many of the tech companies that don't have visions for products, they are assembling parts. Parts are available. They buy the parts, they put them together, they put them on a circuit board, they buy a screen, they get a chassis, and they assemble them. And you can see that for the last 25 years, Apple has these designers who are like, this is what we want to build. And then they go to manufacturers and basically make them invent processes, or they invent processes to do it, from cutting glass to making different parts out of different materials. And it's a real contrast, and it's why Apple has been so successful in so many different ways, is that Apple culturally seems to just be unwilling to be told, no, you can't do that. And if they are told they can't do it, they're like, okay, we're going to send some guys and we're going to figure out how to do it. And then we're going to do it. And sometimes, like in the early days with the iMac, the original G3 iMac, they had a whole prototype, and the manufacturing guy comes back and says, we can't make this. It's not the physics of it. The head handle will just fly right off. We can't make it. And Jobs is like, get out of here. You're going to be, pack your bags. You're out of here. And he goes, bring in the next guy. And the next guy, bring in my expert and he comes in and he looks at it and he goes to Steve and he's like, Steve, laws of physics, the guy was right. You can't do it. And then they're like, okay, get Johnny Ive in here. And then Johnny Ive's like, all right, physics, fine. And so they had all these learnings, and they changed how they built the iMac G3, and they were able to make that iMac G3. There's one behind me now. That's great. But over the years, you can see them building this whole process where, instead of saying that glass on the iPhone is impossible, you can't make it like that because nobody's done it, they say, this is how we want it. Now let's figure out how to make it. And then they do. And then everybody else can make it too, right? Because that knowledge is out there. And I hadn't really thought about Apple in that way. And that is absolutely a thing that's been consistent for a couple of decades, at least, with them, is they are just not willing to settle for stuff that's not good enough for them. And if they want to make something new and interesting and fancy, they'll just force it to exist in the world. It's wild stuff. And
that was part of the irony of, again, the book. It's not only lots of great information. There are a lot of business books that contain a lot of good information. This one tells a really good linear story, and it points out the irony that one of the things that sunk Apple in the 80s was that they did have that idea of we're going to build exactly what we want using components that only we have and only we can manufacture it. Meanwhile, IBM said, yeah, you know what? Let's subcontract out a special team that says design us a PC made of off-the-shelf components that we can source from anywhere, that can be built anywhere. And as a result, they didn't have half the troubles that Apple was having trying to build, assemble, test, configure, and ship everything that they were trying to ship at the same time. It's one of the reasons why the IBM PC, as much as Steve Jobs disdained it for being tacky, immediately ate the lunch of the Apple II and the Mac.
MacBreak Weekly on the air. Alex Lindsay, Andy Anako, Jason Snell. We're glad you're here. If you're not yet a member of the club, well, you should thank a club member for making this show possible. 25% of our revenue, our operating costs now come from the club, and it's such an important part of keeping Twit and the whole network going and keeping the shows on and paying our wonderful contributors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Advertising goes a long way, 75%, but it's not the whole thing. If you would like to join the club, we would sure love to have you. And it's not just your $10 that we want. We want you as part of our Club Twit Discord, which is a great hang for all the people in the club. And pretty great place to be with the shows and with special shows and programming, things like our coverage of the keynotes at WWDC, Build, Google I/O. You also get ad-free versions of everything we do, because I hate it when, somebody charges you money and then shows you an ad too. I won't do it. So we cut out the ads, so you don't have to listen to ads. You don't even have to listen to this plug. And you just get that warm and fuzzy feeling that you're helping us do content that you love. If you listen to a show or two, I think it's worth $10 a month. I hope you do too. Visit twit.tv/clubtwit. We would love to have you a member. We have family plans. We have company plans as well. And of course, there's an annual membership as well. twit.tv/clubtwit. Oh, and by the way, once you join Club Twit, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. I often hear from people you don't have to be in the Discord. A lot of people don't go in the Discord. Discord's where you see what's coming up. They say, well, how am I supposed to find out if I don't join the Discord? That's the newsletter. Every week we put that out with, here's what's coming up. And that's free, twit.tv/newsletter. And no, we don't sell your address. Of course not. We wouldn't do anything like that. Thank you so much to our club members. We appreciate it. We really appreciate it. On we go with the episode here. There's so much stuff. Have I left anything out that you guys wanted to talk about?
I wanted to talk about the custom iPhone camera that Apple built for the F1 movie. So Wired had a really fun, really interesting article about it that really shows how committed and involved Apple is on some of their own produced movies. It describes that for the on-car video film footage they were getting, F1 cars have an actual TV camera transponder.
They have many cameras. They have a helmet cam. They have a driver's point of view. Last weekend I've never seen it before, a camera view of the wheel well.
Yeah.
So part of those are for, of course, the teams to keep an eye on what's going on. But part of it
is for the cover for broadcast, but none of them are like film quality. So
no.
Apple actually built a camera that is completely identical in weight and aerodynamics and shape to the standard onboard camera, so it wouldn't affect the dynamics of the cars that it was mounted on. But essentially, they rebuilt and redesigned and what they think is probably an iPhone 15 with the same lens, same battery, same everything into this hardware.
Notice it's aerodynamic. It's actually a wing.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's the exact same pod that they put that is standard on F1 cars. Because again, they could not change the weight, they could not change the airflow or anything. It was controlled via USB-C, so that they plug an iPad into it to change the camera settings and things like that. One interesting tidbit was, I'm going to quote here, they of course created custom firmware for it for the needs of the production, and this custom firmware inevitably led to two new features in the iPhone 15 Pro: log encoding and the support for the Academy color encoding system color workflow. So these were built for this custom camera, and then they said, hey, let's just port this over and make this an iPhone 15 feature. It's a really interesting article. Shows you exactly how this wasn't just they wrote a check and, hey, wow, great, we get to have our picture taken. Tim Cook gets to have his picture taken with Lewis Hamilton. Obviously the marketing hype is they're making Tim Cook and a whole bunch of other people like available for all kinds of interviews. There's a really long one in Variety, for instance. So obviously this is part of the hype, but it is really interesting to say, no, they even went so far as that, no, we will lend our engineers to build to build you a camera based on the iPhone if that's what you need to make this happen. That is.
They did a funny thing too with the trailer. If you watch it in the Apple TV app, they use the haptics of the phone.
It's actually pretty interesting. It was one of those things like it didn't work all the time, but there was enough of it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know if I'd want to watch a whole movie that way, but as a trailer or a commercial, it was kind of fun. I do feel like it was like they turned something like vibrate here, vibrate there, vibrate more or less.
Right.
It'd be really fun to connect some kind of sensor to the car itself, and then measure the vibrations and then turn those back into vibrations on the phone for certain things, like so that it feel even. It didn't feel quite like that's what they did. Like
what it made me think about is, remember that William Castle movie, like The Tingler, where they put like seat buzzers, what if like they made so you can put your phone underneath your seat, underneath your seat cushion, and it's linked to what you're watching on your Apple TV.
Phone in your back pocket, and you're going to have a whole exactly.
I have to. My neighbor works at Lucas Sound, and I remember a few months ago was working on the trailer. I wonder if they built that into the soundtrack for Apple so that there's vibration. I don't know. I'll ask.
I don't think it's publicly available to be able to do that with anything. I think that it's a
custom. It's a custom
thing
job
right now for Apple. But it does feel like hopefully for them, F1 is successful because they went all in.
$200 million plus. No one really knows the real cost of it. That's a lot of money to get a picture with Lewis Hamilton, but
he looks so badass. The Variety article is worth watching just to see how badass Tim Cook looks, and not just because he's standing next to one of the coolest men in the world right now.
Lewis is not only a 7-time champion of F1, he's also a fashion icon, and he's a great guy, and that's pretty cool. So the movie comes out in just a few days, June 27th. I wish I were able to get IMAX tickets, but as you pointed out a few weeks ago, Alex, there's only one IMAX theater in our area, and it sells out instantly.
It's like in seconds. Yeah, it's
seconds.
It's a pretty hard thing to get good seats there. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to, I think that what people often get caught up in is this whole like, well, how well did it do at the box office? Doesn't really matter. Like the box office is gravy. It's like, well, we'll get some of the money back, but that's not why they're doing it. I mean, they're doing it to position what they're, it's positioning the channel. And, while this is, Apple may be behind right now, one of the things that we're seeing is that if you look at the data for a lot of these shows, people are basically gravitating to really high quality shows and YouTube. So if you're making schlocky kind of in between like $75,000 a minute, you're in that's like a not a great place to be anymore, because so Apple's pathway of we're going to spend a lot of money on high quality stuff has turned out. I don't think when they started it looked as smart as it does now, which is that they're hitting the high mark on lots of their movies, and they're going to probably F1 is probably one of the final. I mean, they're not going to do they're going to do like one. It feels like they're going to do one or two of these a year.
This is the biggest push I've seen for a movie since Wicked, since last year, and I was Wicked was so over.
And that usually means that they feel like they have something. What happens?
They're not going to spend that money unless it's going to be recouped.
You can watch a lot of. You can tell what happens when like everyone's talking about something and then suddenly all the PR disappears. That means somebody saw it and was like, let's move that to February.
Eddie Q says he's got different goals. I hope when people go see the movie, they walk out wanting to be a race car driver. Okay.
Tim Cook
Tim's quote from this Variety article is, it's the perfect and this is really interesting, the perfect vehicle to test Apple's power to affect culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you
that's
see a huge,
interesting,
because F1 is trying to push into the United States, they're doing more races here, and suddenly, if there's some kind of major uptick or major change in interest, I think that's what they're trying to measure. As far as like, do people? Because I'm a good example. Like I barely know the difference between F1 and Indy. Like, they're kind of they're fast cars. Yeah. But if you talk to someone from F1
there's a big
and you mention Indy, they're like, come on now. Like
I was on a cruise with the Stig from, Yeah. The original Stig. And there were a number of Brits on the cruise ship who were really miffed that America had Miami, Austin, and Las Vegas when legendary tracks like Silverstone were struggling to keep their franchise for F1 races. But Liberty Media, an American company, owns Formula One.
Right.
So there's a reason for it. In fact, Liberty's the rights for this in the U.S. are up. ESPN has them right now, but they're up at the end of this season. And I'd be very interested to see if Apple, I think this would be, as much as Major League Soccer was a big deal for Apple, this could be a really big deal for Apple. I think.
The Variety article is very much worth reading because, again, make sure you keep it in context that Tim Cook and Eddie Q are being interviewed to promote a movie and to promote Apple. So this is, a very, very
every race has 28
thing.
cameras running simultaneously, 5,000 hours of film. I mean, this is a big business.
And I think
he's saying, but in the interviews, he's basically talking about how this is sort of an offshoot of what we do at Apple, where we can't. He doesn't say this explicitly, but he knows that we can't get like 82% market share, like Windows or other platforms can. We want to do something that is special and unique, and at the intersection of liberal arts and engineering. I don't have
to quote that before.
Exactly. I don't have it in my mind. I'm going to sell more iPhones because of it. Cook says. Right. I don't think about that. I think about it as a business, and just like we leverage the best of Apple across iPhones and across our services, we try to leverage the best of Apple TV Plus.
Yeah, I'm not a gearhead. I don't like the smell of fossil fuels burning in the sun, but something about F1 attracted me. It's high tech, it's high drama, and I think the Drive to Survive show on Netflix, probably Apple looked at that and said that thing's doing big.
And I think that Ford versus Ferrari, I didn't expect
that was a great movie too.
I didn't expect to like that movie. It was like it just sat there waiting for a year for me to watch it. And then finally I watched it. I was like, oh, it's pretty good. And so I think that, but I do think it'll be really interesting to see if Apple keeps on running with this. But I think I think one of the reasons they jumped in so heavily was because they were given so much access. I think that was part of the front end. You give Apple access, and look at what we do.
Brad Pitt was on the track.
They had their own paddock at all these races.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
One of Red Bull's drivers, Yuki Tsunoda, said, "I enjoyed racing with Brad Pitt, but for some reason he was always ahead of me." F1 drivers do not like to be second.
You undergo a lot of training and a lot of exercise. He did not have the handsomeness training required.
Although, if you look at this picture from the Variety article of Tim Cook with Brad Pitt and Lewis Hamilton, Tim's much more enamored of Lewis than he is of Pitt. It's pretty funny.
I find they did a surprise drop-in at an Apple event to promote Severance, as a matter of fact, which makes you think that Brad Pitt was a maybe for the event, and so they didn't want to promote it beforehand. Yeah. But it's a big picture of so many smiling Apple employee faces in the group photo.
And who was at the Canadian Grand Prix this past weekend but Ben Stiller? Of all people, highlighted many times in the broadcast for some reason.
Yeah, the Variety article actually talked to anybody who has a successful show on Apple TV and who has not given an interview in the last 2-3 years about how horrible their experience was with producing something for Apple TV is quoted and talked to in this article.
Yeah, it's really
the entire platform.
Get ready for the hype train.
I will say that I actually know some people pretty well that work on some of the Apple stuff. And I'm always surprised when people say, oh, it was horrible to work on the Apple thing, because they're like, oh my gosh, like working on an Apple movie is, for at least the guys below the line, they're like, everything is done the way it's supposed to be done.
I bet the catering's pretty good.
They said, no, just like, but the production is, the schedule makes sense, the budget makes sense, everything makes sense, everything. And then they go, but I had a friend who went from a Apple TV production to Hulu right after it, and they were like, it was like dropping off a cliff.
Yeah,
he said it was just like, it was like, we're like, it was like
Disney.
He said the Apple ones are hard. They're still hard work. They're still long hours, but everything is just working. Because someone said, oh, we need a little more money for this, or we need to do it, and someone said, okay, right?
But we've always said this, that Apple doesn't need to make money in their productions. It's about a much larger strategy. So they have a real advantage over
Apple and Amazon.
And Amazon. So solo streamers streamers like Disney. I mean, I guess it promotes the park. I don't know.
I mean, I think that Apple, Amazon, Netflix, just because of its sheer size, Apple and Amazon those are the three that I feel like are a lock to do this for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think Disney and Max are probably the next two, and then after that, I think it gets real dark real quick. Like it's
even Max, which is now rechristened,
they keep on trying to figure it out,
has spun off the streamers. They say, go away. We don't want any of these anchors on our business.
No, that's not true. The guy who spun it all off, he's staying with the studio and the streamers, and they spun off a cable company.
That's what I meant.
While they're profitable, they are going to decline in assets.
No, that's what I meant.
Load them
Those
up with
streamers,
debt.
the CNN and the like. Yeah.
There's too many. There's too many, and there's going to be consolidation for sure. But Apple
and nobody's watching TV. Did you see that? Latest for the first time ever, New York Times. More people watch streaming than watched all network television combined.
When you dig, streaming 45% versus 44% for broadcast and cable combined. That's the first time it's ever happened.
And when you dig into it, the number one thing that they're watching among those things, because a lot of times they don't include YouTube into it, but YouTube scales out everybody. And I get up every morning, like I get up to bike every morning, and all I'm watching is YouTube. I'm just bouncing around YouTube, one thing after another.
So what's Apple's YouTube strategy?
I don't think there is it. I think that they're moving as far away from YouTube as possible, which is that we're going to spend a lot of money on things and have it be really, really high end. And, so we're the place that you go because where more and more where I find myself going for a really high quality, non-YouTube experience is Apple TV. Like Murderbot is like a destination for my family.
It's a really good show.
I mean, it is so good.
Really,
it just drives me crazy that it's every week. Because you're just like,
and it's only like 22 minutes every week. It's driving me crazy. What
makes me sad is that the model works so well that that we're now going to go to weekly. We're going to go back to the old days of weekly 22-minute episodes because they can spend less money and hold you longer for a subscription. So I understand why they're doing it, but it's still like,
From the Variety article, Cook believes strongly the road to success is focusing on achieving the exceptional. Apple products have to be great, not just good. The movie business is no different. Quote, we really only do a few things. We have a few products for the size of the company we are. We pour all of ourselves into each one of these, and we do TV and movies the same way.
Well, and I think that there are so many things that Apple has not started to milk out of this system, which is that they don't have to milk ads like Amazon. What they have is a headset that could give you immersive scenes. They have interactive components that could be added. They have there's all these other things that Apple could be doing that I feel like they're not, they're barely touching what they can do if they actually build all this kind of content that people want to see and want to see the behind the scenes of and all those other things.
Yeah. All right, let's take our final break. Get your picks of the week ready. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. No beards in a bunch. Although I bet you those sideburns might cause some difficulties, Andy. I don't know with the Vision Pro.
I should tap into the friend who owns one and try to borrow it again.
Just see what happens.
Still don't have $3,500 to spend on a headset, but
I think actually you've got the clear part that is necessary,
exactly,
which is the under the nose angle is solid there.
That's a good point. So if it screws up my face, I know that's been done out of spite.
It's aimed at you. I am this close to buying a Vision Pro. They've slowly added enough things that I go, oh, it might be.
I hear there's some pretty good deals on used Vision Pros out there.
Yeah, I bet there are. Yeah, I bet there are. All right. Well, we'll see. It's not quite there yet.
Wow, this battery's only been recharged 4 times according to this app. Wow.
All I got to do is just take your favorite movie and watch it on a Vision Pro. Just watch the whole thing and then decide whether you.
I like to watch movies with my wife. That's the difference.
I watch it with other people, but I fly. I do other things, and I'm in hotel rooms, and it's nice to.
Yeah, I understand. If you traveled a lot, that would be a great thing.
I was watching a movie this morning for a podcast after my wife left for work, and I had a little bit of time because I'm cramming because we're doing it tonight, and I watched it in Vision Pro. And with a giant, much bigger than my TV, and I'm like, that's pretty good.
It's like a 20. It's like a 20-foot. It's a 20-foot monitor, not like a 20-foot soft screen. It is 20 sharper than. It's good. I mean, I spend a lot of time in theaters. Sharper than the theater screen. It is. It is very, very sharp. Yeah. In that.
Maybe I'll buy it to watch F1 because I can't get the IMAX tickets.
I'm still gonna try to go
or Superman.
You just have to go on like a Monday afternoon. That's the key.
I can do that.
Yes.
If you get tickets, let me know.
Right,
Add one for Leo. We'll go together.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll meet you. I saw you hanging with Renee Ritchie last week.
Think of Leo.
They Loria and Renee and a couple other folks came over to the house. So we
nice.
We did some sous vide and some veggies and some.
That's great.
I got to hang out. It was great.
In case people don't know, Loria Petrucci and Renee Ritchie are an item. Mm-hmm.
So
nice. How fun.
So we had a great time.
How fun. This is MacBreak Weekly. I am Leo, and you are watching Twit. We're so glad to have you. Now, for the picks of the week. Who should I start with today? How about me?
What?
What? No, I couldn't. No. Really? Me? You want me to do it? Oh, I couldn't.
Don't hide your light under a bushel, Leo.
Actually, I'm stalling because I forgot what it was. I know I wrote something down. I know it was a good one.
Hand it to somebody else, and then we'll come back to you, Leo. That's how this works.
Leo's pick. Let me see if I can find it in my bookmarks. Do you remember, Anthony?
A skeptical look from Anthony.
All right, Jason Snell. What's your pick of the week?
I had a friend who just bought a new electric car, and she was asking about car charging stuff because these days, eventually it's going to get clear, but right now it's still kind of confusing. A lot of people with electric cars have, if it's a non-Tesla, it comes with a fast charger called a CCS port. But in the United States, they're going to all eventually turn over to be NACS, which is what we think of as the Tesla plug, which is a better plug because it's smaller. But as a result, we're going to be living in Dongle Town forever with electric cars. The good news is that even though the Tesla plug is different, there are adapters, and Tesla has opened a large portions of its network, its supercharger network, to non-Teslas. And the problem is that how do you find where to go? If you've got a non-Tesla, where do you go to get a fast charge on the road, and which Tesla chargers are open and which ones are not, and what CCS chargers are out there, and what are available for you? And so the answer is PlugShare, which is a great app. That is a database of chargers, and you can set filters based on what your car is, and you can say, show me, I have a non-Tesla, but show me CCS and Tesla because I have an adapter. And so this is what I told my friend is like PlugShare is the answer here. I've used it. Every charger, it's got details of like what the plugs are, how many are there, what's around there. People can send photos so you can see like, is this, in a dirt hole, or is there stuff around it? What's going on there? Like there's an iPhone app. It's a website. It is no matter what you've got, if you've got an EV, this is the app to use because it's not tied to one network or even one plug type. So if you have an adapter, you check in your little filter and say, yes, I've got a Chevy Bolt, but I also have a CCS to NACS adapter. So you can show me NACS plug stations as well. And this is the resource. I answered her question, so I thought I would mention it here. I keep it on my phone at all times because I have electric cars, and sometimes you want to know where to charge. And it's gotten more confusing in a good way because opening that Tesla network means that there are a lot of other cars that there's way more Tesla chargers than there are non-Tesla chargers in the United States.
And they all work.
By a lot. And they all work. And at the Tesla charger, you'll find 16 or 24 chargers or maybe 8. And at the other one, Electrify America, you'll find 2. So now that network is open, it can be part of your strategy depending on where you need to go from point A to point B, especially if you get an adapter. So PlugShare is great because it's not tied to any one network. It just wants to have all the data about all the different chargers that are out there, and I find it incredibly useful. Even now, when there's more EV charging stuff in Maps apps, it's a good purpose-built tool.
Yeah,
for free.
And you should probably know that most people who have electric cars charge at home. almost always.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good public service. Everybody freaks out about road trips.
What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
But the truth is that you charge at home. And in fact, there was a great video on one of my favorite YouTube channels, Technology Connections, where he talked about and made a very good point, which is it also doesn't need to be the super max fast charging at home. Electric cars will charge on a regular plug.
Yeah,
and if you can't put in it takes a long time, but if you're driving 40 or 50 miles a day, it's enough. Even on a regular plug.
That's
and
a good point. Yeah.
And this video is like you also don't necessarily need the full number of amps.
I found my app, by the way.
Oh, I think
Congratulations.
I know what your pick is. I know exactly what it is.
Did you hear that? Sega. Does it give you chills?
So anyway, that's my pick is but yes, remember that mostly you charge at home.
Yes, I agree. And that's a good pick. Well, I didn't know you had an electric vehicle. What do you drive?
We got a Chevy Bolt. We had a Nissan Leaf for a long time, and the Nissan Leaf doesn't go very far anymore. It's 13 years old. So we got a Chevy Bolt. Very nice. Good car.
This might bring back some memories, Andy. So Sega has decided to get out of the iPhone business. They're turning off their servers.
It's a taxi, but somehow I don't think that man has full control of his faculties. Almost like it's a crazy taxi.
It's a crazy taxi.
AKA the Tesla auto taxi service.
Sega has announced that it's discontinuing support for the 9 retro games it ported some years ago to iOS and Android too, by the way, including Crazy Taxi, Streets of Rage, Classic and 2, Super Monkey Ball, great game, Virtua Tennis Challenge, Golden Axe Classics, Shining 4 Classics. I got both the Sonic CD Classic and Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. The servers for, I guess communal play are gone, but the games are now free. So, yeah. You might want to quickly, before they take them off the store, get all those classic Segas.
What a friendly gesture that was! Not to simply like pull the rub, simply say, "Hey, by the way, it's a land grab." It's like when you're moving when a store is moving out of like its property, saying, "Yeah, by the way, we're going to be leaving behind a whole lot of really cool stuff. Go and grab it."
I love Crazy Taxi. Anyway, you need this on your iPad. You can crash into things. It rocks. It's fun. And you're a crazy taxi. Andy Anako, your picks of the week.
I'm so happy to make this recommendation. One of my favorite comics, and it's been one of my favorites for probably as long as I've been reading comics, is Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo. And he's been the same single person writing, drawing, lettering every single step of the way, a consistently told series of easy to assimilate stories. It's not part of this huge like multi-dimensional universe where it's like a soap opera dropping in. Each of these stories is pretty much designed so that you can drop in at the start of the story of one of these stories at any point, and you can simply pick it up as you go. Essentially it's set in feudal Japan during the Edo period, where there's a samurai who has lost.
Is he a Ronin?
He's a Ronin. He's lost his master in battle, and now he's doing the warrior's pilgrimage of going from town to town to town, village to village, occasionally hiring his swords out, sometimes just simply getting caught up in a situation, sometimes seeking out good things to do, running into an amazing amount of characters along the way. You're going to notice that Usagi Yojimbo is a rabbit. Yeah. Please don't think that that's weird. It's just think about it. Those of us who are big fans of it and tried to encourage people to understand that this is like a really good, mature, grown-up story. It's like, imagine like this is a theatrical performance in which the performers are wearing animal masks to convey like on The Lion King, the stage version. Like, okay, just go with that. But the great way to convince you to do it is that there's a humble bundle of Usagi Yojimbo trade paperbacks. That is, you can pay $1, $10, or $18 for $1. You get 2 really good books. For $18, you get like a big whole collection of them. And all of the money that gets collected is contributed to a very good cause, the Hero Initiative, which is a charitable organization that takes care of comic book creators who have fallen on hard times, as creative people often do, particularly later in life. And you'll get open, non-DRM'd, I think, PDFs of each of these books in full color, full resolution that you can load on your iPad, load on absolutely anything. And I could not have spent like that $18 fast enough to get like the huge multi-volume collection. Because, like I said, you don't. It's not like, wait a minute, okay, that's Spider-Man, but that's not Spider-Man. Oh well, that's the Spider-Man from Universe 2122, and you have to understand that in this. No, it's like if you have never. If these stories are like have going on for 30 years, whether you read like the second book or the 40th book, you can start at page 1, and Stan Sakai will basically ease you into the story, and it's just beautifully done. It's probably the one comic that if I had to give up every other comic in my collection and just have this collection, because they're just so immensely satisfying. And of course, the next issue of Saga Jimbo comes out tomorrow, as a matter of fact. It's like part 4 of like a 5-part storyline. And again, they're so well done. So this is what happens when one creator has absolute control over something, keeps his eyes on the prize, a high level of quality, and never hands it off to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't know what the character is. It's just masterfully done.
What do you, just to keep us up to date, what do you read your comics on nowadays?
I read it on my iPad, and I use an app called Panels. Because
okay.
I do. I'll make a confession here. The Comixology app, when it was Comixology, was very good. It wasn't perfect, but it was very good. When Amazon bought Comixology and then later on like killed the custom bespoke comic book reading app and said, "Oh, we'll just add a few comic book reading features to the standard Kindle app," it just absolutely tanked. So
thank you, Amazon, once again.
I will confess that I buy my comics every single week, and then I outsource a non-DRM copy of that same comic so I can read it in Panels, which is a properly created experience for reading and organizing comic books. The Kindle app is borderline unusable, and I've always held that so long as you have paid for this content, you shouldn't be required to pay extra to read it on another device or to read it in the way that you need to be able to read it. And again, if the Kindle app were even at like 3/4 as good as the Comixology app, I probably wouldn't even bother to do this. I was simply, okay, purchase, download, good, I'll deal with it. But it's so terrible that I don't have any ethical qualms whatsoever. And I know I'm supporting pirate sites by doing this, but I don't have an ethical issue with it since I'm actually paying for this stuff.
There's probably software that can remove the DRM, I would guess.
That's more difficult now because Amazon removed the feature where you can simply download.
That's right.
They used to be able to download the DRM file, and then of course there, as Jason has very nobly documented on 6 Colors, there are tools that will remove the DRM. But that's why I was abusing like the 1 gigabit internet here in the library over the course of a week to download like all 3,000 of my purchased titles to make sure that I could at least like at some later date strip the DRM out of them. Because again, the Kindle app, that just ain't. That ain't. I did
the same thing when I decided not to renew my Amazon, my Audible. I said, well, at least I can download all of these because
I don't think there's anything wrong with using Audio Hijack to simply capture the stream. You bought them, you own them.
Yeah. Mr. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week.
So obviously the iPhone 15 really jumped, from a film level or from a filming level or video level, however you want to call it. And one of the things that it did is that the chip got a lot bigger in it. And it turns out that the chip, when you're grabbing it at open gate, is very, very close, within 3% of the 16 millimeter film. so you can actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
interesting.
So if you get the full gate, but it's very hard to get that whole, grab onto it and to give it more of that film look and everything else that people want. So Perla is built for the phone and is really built to give you that kind of filmmaker's look. This is, if you're doing something that's more practical, you still may want to use, if you want to do something easier, you still may use like Kino, or you may use the Apple app. If you want to do something that's really technical, you're still probably going to end up using the Blackmagic camera. But if you're looking for this kind of film look and you want to put it together there and have it kind of have that classic feel to it, your phone can actually get very, very close to the look and feel of a 16 millimeter film.
Wow.
And it's a relatively simple interface. I would say that it's kind of halfway between the simplicity of Kino and the Blackmagic camera, which is probably a bit more heavy. But
it also does stills, not just film. That's interesting, huh?
Yeah. So if you're looking for something, I mean, there's lots of things that will,
a lot of people don't like the over sharpening extra stuff that Apple and Google do in their cameras.
Right. So this is, if you're looking for that look, this is a fun one. I think there's a small subscription to it per, it's like $25 a year or something like that, or $3. You can get it for like $3 or $4 for the month, I think, so that you can see if you like it or not. So anyway, or maybe per week. I don't know. I just recently downloaded. It just came out, or this update came out, and it's really fun. So.
I'm downloading it right now. I like the idea. Perla, spelled like the Pearl, Pearla, Pro Filming. Very nice. Thank you, Alex. Alex Lindsay's at officehours.global every day of the week. You can ask questions, think and talk about production, the kinds of stuff he's a master of. Anything you want to plug right now?
I'm going to be doing some live streaming tests, probably starting tomorrow on Substack. I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm trying to.
You can live stream on Substack.
You can live stream to Substack, and I can't tell you how yet, but next week I will be able to.
Wow, that's the one platform we don't live stream on. I'd like to find out more. Yeah.
So I'm working on a couple projects. We're moving Michael Krasny's show. We're taking a little hiatus on Michael Krasny's show and moving it to Substack. And
so people can pay for it, subscribe to it.
We've had subscription, but we think that the cross pollination in Substack is probably going to be more effective.
Yeah.
It's really, there's a lot going. I mean, we did a lot of studying, and we think that that's going to be really interesting to kind of build more of that process around there. So we're going to move it, but I have to figure it all out before we get it there. So one of the things I'm going to do is start streaming, because we're going to stream those shows and take questions and everything else there. So anyway, so if you find me on Substack, you can find, I think I put it out on a tweet or whatever, but it's Alex B-E-E Lindsay on Substack. My middle name is B, so so that's how I do it.
Wait a minute, your middle name is not B-E-E.
Benjamin.
Oh yeah, okay.
So B. Yeah, that would be funny if my middle name was B.
That would be very funny.
No, B. You can always tell that's the name I use when someone else. I think I have the other Alex Lindsay, but anyway. It's
my middle initial is G. It'd be nice if my middle name were G-E-E.
Yeah, Leo G.
Leo G. Laporte.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I might think about changing things.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, and then also if you sign up for Office Hours, we'll be streaming my daughter's band is a high school band on Saturday. And so you'd have to go to officehours.global/join to sign up, and you'll get announcements inside of Discord. You have to kind of find your way to Discord, but and we'll put out the link. I may tweet it out. We'll see how I feel about it. We have a studio.
See how the rest of the kids feel about it too. They may not like the idea.
Oh, we've told them that's the deal. Like, so
okay.
they're excited. They're excited about this.
All right.
So
they want to be famous. Yeah.
They're
that generation. They all want to be influencers. So
yeah. So we have a little studio that we found in Richmond that's gonna let us take over for a little while, and we're going to put some Blackmagic cameras in there.
So you're not doing it in a concert venue. You're going to do it in a studio.
Yeah, we're going to record this. We're going to record a couple songs as well as for the album. The album. Yeah, exactly. Sure. And so, but you'll also get to see them. And they're great. It's a great band. So they're doing some fun stuff. So anyway, so that's going to happen on Saturday. If you sign up,
cool.
It'll probably be more of an internal announcement. So you probably have to go to officehours.global/join and get into that email list, and that email will go out.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Andy Ihnatko, I have no idea how to spell his last name, but if you remember, I have no idea, you'll get at least part of the way there. Ihnatko. That's the rest of it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, but going back to your earlier comment, like imagine like having the initial AI in this area.
I know, that's pretty good, isn't it?
It's kind of like
every time I see your show notes, I go, is that Andy or an AI?
I'm finishing up like the little bibs and bobs on the new site, the new blog.
Nice.
I'm like in the about. Okay, let me explain who the hell I am. And the joke was, and I had the joke for the longest time. I promise you that every single thing is created by AI, and I also promise that nothing on this site is generated by AI. And then I thought that they're probably automated systems that will cause me to regret even joking about everything is created as AI on this site, and so I should probably not do that.
Oh, go ahead, Andy. Live it up. Take a chance.
Absolutely. Hey, I can certainly afford to like send away traffic from my site. Pisha.
I've been doing that for years.
I'm wearing a cardboard belt.
Jason Snell is at sixcolors.com. You can find all of his podcasts at sixcolors.com/podcasts. Anything, or sorry, /Jason.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm going to need to create an alias for /podcast now.
I just screw it now. I'm sorry. Apologies.
Just good. Lots and lots of emptying the notebook about last week and trying to think about where Apple's going with this stuff. Dan Morin and I were both out there, so we've been writing about that quite a bit on Six Colors. And then there's podcast wise, talking to Mike Hurley on Upgrade every Monday, and here every Tuesday. And so yada yada yada. There's a lot going on.
The man lives in front of a microphone.
Oh my goodness,
Jason. Thank you.
That's true. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. We do MacBreak Weekly, as I mentioned, every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. Come on by, watch us live if you wish, but after the fact, on-demand versions on the website, twit.tv/MBW. Subscribe in your favorite podcast player. There's even a YouTube channel, which makes it really easy to share little clips of the show. And if you do subscribe in your favorite podcast client, would you please give us 5 stars? Tell everybody what a great show this is. When you've been around, when a show's been around for a couple of decades, people kind of, it falls off the top of the charts, as it were. It's not because there are fewer people listening, but you just don't have the same number of new subscribers. So it really helps us if you can put a nice review in there for us and spread the word. Thank you so much. Thanks to our club members who make this all possible. And by the way, thanks to Anthony Nielsen, who's filling in for John Ashley this week, who's got, how is he going to be gone 2 weeks? He already did his honeymoon, yeah? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Or, well, I think that's another week out, but he'll be back in a week.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for doing his job. It's really interesting. I know immediately that it's not John Ashley switching the show, that it's you. But even the people in the club, the Discord, said, Anthony likes the 4-up a lot.
That was me. That was me, Leo.
Oh,
because
you noticed
because he hits the 4-up, and then I realize that I'm taking a drink, and
I like it.
Put down the drink.
Yeah, same thing. He caught me putting powdering my nose.
We're all used to a certain flow.
Yeah, we're not safe.
I still have most of my cookies left over here.
The Chips Ahoy uneaten. No, I like it. Good job. Thank you, Anthony. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you. And as I have said, for now, almost 2 decades, it's time to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye. Get tech news at your pace with Twit TV's perfect pair of shows. For quick, focused insights, Tech News Weekly brings you essential interviews with the journalists breaking today's biggest stories. But maybe you need more. That's why I'm here. Dive deep with me on This Week in Tech, your first podcast of the week and the last word in tech. Industry insiders dissect everything from AI to privacy to cybersecurity in tech's most influential and longest-running roundtable discussion. Short or long, streamlined or comprehensive, twit.tv keeps you well-informed. Subscribe to both shows wherever you get your podcasts, and head over to our website, twit.tv, for even more independent tech journalism.